Nash indeed.
Welcome to the national pastime. Introduce yourself.
I'm Aaron.
And I am Nash, for which that shout was named, and for which this show was also named. Where are we coming on that theme song, Sound Guy Ben? Our 5-second intro. That consists of one word and a couple sounds.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Nash! Whoa! Yeah, and it's just like...
And that's pretty much it.
That is, like, almost literally it. Just had some guitar sounds. All right, so, no updates from last time?
No.
There's been no work done, has there?
No.
That's fine. Write yourself a note. Do some work on that. We're so close. All right, here we go. Notes. 2 pieces here. Let's see. All right, let's see where to start. Should I start with... I feel like the sponsor leads directly into my giant rant, which I was writing notes for last week, which also, you know, could lead nicely into some stories going back and forth about how those relate to us. Got notes from the man. Yeah, I guess I'll do sponsor first.
Okay.
All right. This episode's sponsor, the Major Airlines.
Yes.
Yes. When you need your something ruined, whether it's your day, your valuables, your vacation, or potentially your whole life, choose the Major Airlines. Major Airlines. If you didn't want it, you wouldn't dress that way. It's a reference to rape, is what that is.
Yeah. I got it.
It's just all good. Yeah. For the 2 people listening who also got it, you're welcome for me explaining it to you already.
Yeah. No. I know they've had some recent stories. Not too flattering.
Yeah, it's been about a decade of downward sliding.
Yeah.
And then here in the past couple of years, it's just been a straight free fall plummet. But we'll get to that in a bit. In a minute, which is a bit and a minute combined.
A little more than a bit, a little less than a minute.
That's right. Right. It's longer than a literal minute, but less than a metaphorical minute. I see Sound Guy Ben has got his phone out. Are we all set to have someone call in again for like the 3rd week in a row?
I turned it on vibrate, so no.
Excellent.
Good.
All right. So notes from the man. So last episode, we were talking about no one had heard from him from a bit because he was in Hawaii. He'd been working to get to Hawaii, hang out for a bit. He's not going to do any work while he's there. And then working overtime when he got back to kind of compensate. So he's been playing catch up with our podcast here. So he's a couple episodes behind, and I don't know how far behind he is, but I know that after we recorded a last episode a week ago, that there was a message from him. So he must have left it simultaneously as we were recording. A message from him left on the old-timey answering machine at the house that I'm staying at, directed at me. And so I didn't talk to him directly, but he's got some feedback. I don't know how far in he is, but I think he's to the episode where we decided on the name, the national pastime. So maybe that was 3 or 4 episodes ago. I don't remember. I don't recall, but that's how far he is. So, first note, he thinks it's good that we've been talking about news, kind of ease us into things and, sort of topical to the episode of what we're talking about, but not like time sensitive. They're not like topical to what's going on in the world per se, the world by itself, as in, because we are still editing these episodes, so we don't know when they're coming out. And so, if we talk about something that's very time sensitive and then the episode comes out in like 8 or 9 months, it's going to be extremely dated. That being said, he also said in that same sentence, like, yeah, who knows, the episodes could come out in like a year, you don't want them to be dated. And that was extremely disheartening for me, because I want these out like right now. We're creating a ferocious backlog, and I myself want to do some work on them after they get main posted. I want to post them on my YouTube channel and do some stuff. So yeah, I say sooner rather than later, because we can always improve on future episodes. But I don't want to create an entire year's worth of episodes, because it's going to be hard to then incorporate listener feedback.
Yeah.
in an expeditious manner, because we'll have to go back and retroactively add in our comment on recent feedback to prior episodes that we've already recorded,
Right.
but that are like queued up from 10 months ago. And I expect that for the first few episodes, but not an eternity of splicing new comments into older episodes.
Well, and like I have another friend who she's been doing like a podcast for a few years, and when I was telling her about doing this, she was like, biggest piece of advice I can give you is don't try to make it perfect.
Yeah, and I
right
like
from the start.
yeah, and I think that's where the man has like really high or he either has a very like lofty vision or a very specific vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we're either to that level or in that spot, depending on which one of the two it is. But I'm actually I like where we've kind of the groove.
Yeah,
I like
we've kind of settled into.
I like the groove that we've made. I like this groove. And then he said, he was like, yeah, I like you guys talking and all that stuff. And he's like, yeah, but I think the last episode I listened to, I didn't hear any of your stories. I think it was just you guys talking.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah, I was like, nothing wrong with that. We're interesting fellows, I think. Isn't that the point of the podcast? I thought to myself. And he was like, remember, the quest is to capture as many stories as possible from me, for people to listen to, which I agree with, but the stories we can capture in real time, for example, e.g., exempla gratis, like last episode or the episode before that, we talked about my recent jaunt to the Devil's Cave.
Yeah.
Like, and there's plenty of, like, classic Nash stories about me, evading authorities and crossing borders and, fighting ghosts and demons and whatever. But there's also new ones being formed all the time. So, I like to report on those in real time as they happen. And, so, also another thing I like about this is that it's not just me, like, shouting stories. It's also, like, I think us talking about different things gives, like, a sort of a philosophical viewpoint. Kind of gives context to the things we do. You get to know us a little bit better, so people hear the stories and they're like, yeah, I can imagine where this is going to go, or whatever.
I'm kind of here to be, like Nash lives I think everyone would agree at this point, pretty unusual
right,
life.
Atypical. It feels normal for me, but eventually,
Yeah, it's your normal, but for most people, it's kind of like, ooh.
Right.
This is really, different.
Yeah.
I would say I probably live a much more average life.
You're the, if this were a movie, I would be the zany whatever character.
And I'd be like, like the Paul Rudd everyman kind of
you're
guy.
You're the guy that keeps, because if the movie focused solely on me, it would go off the rails. It would become unidentifiable to the audience. So it needs a grounding force. And that's you. Like, if Star Wars was all just
pull you back down to earth every now and then.
Yeah, if Star Wars just had no Luke Skywalker in it, and it was just old man space wizard Ben Kenobi and weirdo garbage man Darth Vader floating balls around and like fluorescent tube light fighting, it would I don't think it would resonate as well. If there was no Han Solo and no Luke Skywalker, if it was just space wizards, I don't think it would be.
Yeah. So most people can't really relate to that because they don't have superpowers.
Right, and they don't lead like aesthetic monkly lives for the most part. So you got these two normal-ish guys to kind of ground it out. Interesting, but normal. So yeah, I would be the. I don't know. You're like
the Boba Fett.
Am I? I was trying to ditch the Star Wars analogy.
The kind of like enigmatic.
Right.
Travels all around the galaxy.
I would hope to be cooler than Boba Fett because he's got a lot of mystique, but I feel like he's probably lame at heart.
Well, he kind of died like a bitch.
Yeah, he did. I mean, whatever. He might still be alive. Who knows? I'm more of the. I don't know, I'm more of like the Tomb Raider, and you are the guys that live in her house. That are normal guys that like research her stuff.
Yeah.
And have to put up with her shenanigans. Who else is around like that? I'm the Captain Jack Sparrow, and you're the everyone else.
Everyone else on the crew.
That's not Barbossa. You're the everyone else that's not Barbossa. I'm the Nicolas Cage in every single movie, and you are everyone else that's not him.
Speaking of Nicolas Cage,
Go on.
On a whim, over the weekend I decided to watch a Nicolas Cage movie that I hadn't seen.
Please be National Treasure.
No.
Was it The Rock?
I've seen National Treasure.
Was it The Rock?
I've seen The Rock before. The Rock's actually a good movie.
The Rock's a fantastic film.
No, I watched
I love The Rock.
Knowing.
I don't know what that is.
It's awful is what it is.
Well, he puts out like 2 movies a month.
Yeah, well, he's basically legally bound to do so.
Yeah, he's quit buying islands, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. Fabergé eggs.
Yeah, just whatever.
To give away as gifts.
Whatever weird stuff. Yeah, he's not even. I don't think he's selfish. I think he just is bad with his money.
Yeah, it's a thing. He has like a gambling problem, but also he gives lavish gifts to his friends.
I know he had a collection of islands for a while. That was a real thing. And then none of his accountants told him he didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And he just kept buying things.
Yeah, basically he was getting sued because he owed all these different like companies and stuff money. And he's basically legally obligated now to
he's like
whatever work he can get.
He's like Hollywood's indentured servant.
Yeah,
like,
all
all
right,
right,
it's
Nicolas
like
Cage.
a legitimate movie if he's offered the part, and it's like a relatively fair amount they're willing to pay him, then like he's like basically has to take the part.
Right. Yes, sound guy Ben.
So how about when you do that show?
Yeah.
Where you go all over the place and all that.
Right.
Make the everyman Nicolas Cage, and he has to say
Oh
yes.
shit, you're right. But here's the thing. Nicolas Cage is an amazing guy, but he can only be Nicolas Cage. So he can't be my grounding foil. We're gonna have 2 unrelatable extreme weirdos doing unrelatable extreme weirdo stuff.
But people would watch it.
Yeah,
Maybe you could
man,
maybe
I would love that show.
A battle
'Cause
between
he
Nash
seems-
and Cage.
he seems-
the Cage Nash.
He seems so enthusiastic about every. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I'd be like, "Hey, you want to go on this quest to find this rare flower that only grows to the top of Mount Everest, and we're probably gonna die?" And I'd be like, "Yeah,
You're like,
yeah,
hell yeah.
yeah, let's call Brockheimer. It's gonna be yes, let's do it." Like that's how. There's no way that everyone would be dead so fast. We'd just be bouncing bad ideas off of each other, and they would
all agree.
They would spiral out of control immediately. He'd be like, "Let's do it, but upside down, underwater." Like, you got it, Nicolas Cage. Yeah. You could call it like... Did you know... Did we talk about this? He actually changed his name to Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Because he's such a fan of Luke Cage, the comic book guy.
That, and also he didn't... like Coppola? Isn't that who he's related to?
Yeah.
That he chose Cage.
Right,
Because
yeah.
he's a fan of Luke Cage. But he decided to change his name because he didn't want to be
Associated
with Coppola. At least not because he didn't want people to pick him for stuff just because he's
he wanted to earn it. So kudos to him, and also kudos to him for choosing that name because of that character. Both super cool things. But yeah, he and I, without a grounding foil, we would need so many grounding foils and like teams of rotating babysitters. That would just be. I had a lady tell me today. She was like, "You've got one of those personalities. It's just crazy interesting. You should audition for Survivor." And I was like, "Oh, I did." She was like, "What?" And she's like, "What about Big Brother?" And I was like, "Funny you should say that because I did." And she was like, "Oh my god, how'd it go?" And I told her, and she's like, "I can't believe they didn't pick you." I'm like, "I don't know, maybe they're saving me for Amazing Race or something like that." And she's like, "You know what would be hilarious? If you were the Bachelor on The Bachelor." And I was like, "Well, you know what? That's another show I've never seen, so I may as well audition for it." But wouldn't it be hilarious? Imagine this, because I've never seen The Bachelor, but to my understanding, it's usually like an attractive, rich, successful guy looking for the same thing in a lady, and he like dates a bunch of ladies at the same time and then eventually picks one. And I was like, well, those guys are usually rich and attractive. I'm not particularly either one of those. Definitely not the first one. And I was like, but TV's got a good way of making everyone look good. And wouldn't it be hilarious if I presented the image that I was rich and successful, and then like the whole time I was like, wait, do I get to take them on dates like however I choose? And she was like, yeah, I think so. And I'm like, all right, that'd be awesome. She'd be like, all right, girl 1, you and I are spelunking down into the Devil's Cave looking for dead bodies full of treasure. Girl 2, you and me are climbing into this active volcano. I hear there's a thing in there. Girl 3, you and I are doing this. It's just like taking them on the worst stuff that I enjoy.
Like, no.
Yeah, but they can't say no because they're contestants on the show. And then at the very end, I finally pick one that's put up with the most stuff. I'm like, yeah, you're the one. It's like, surprise! I'm actually unemployed and poor. Like, this is forever, right? This is true love. We're in it for the long haul. Like, that would be hilarious to me. Just hilarious.
I've never. I've seen, I'm sure, like parts of an episode. I've never like sat and watched the show.
I don't think I've ever seen reality TV.
like,
Now that I think about
the
it.
the only thing I've actually sat, the only reality show I've actually sat and watched like an entire episode of is Naked and Afraid.
And she told me I should audition for that also, and I was like, yeah, I would. Point me to where I need to go.
Yeah, like I find that show very entertaining. Even though, again, it's the whole thing. It's like I don't know how much of it is actually real, but I still find it entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely.
If nothing else, you get to see exotic locations.
Yeah, I like all those things. I like Naked and Afraid. I'm at least half of those things all the time. So sometimes both.
Nash is naked right now.
That's right. It helps me relax. It's the rum and the nudity. I like to be comfortable. What else? How do we start talking about this?
Somehow Nicolas Cage came up and I said,
whatever.
like, I was watching Nicolas Cage
capturing my.
It was terrible.
Because the whole point of the podcast, at least at its inception, was to capture my stories and catalog them for people to listen to. And I feel like now, all right, we brought it back. So I feel like, I still get my stories in here, so we can have our podcast. Because eventually, if I don't go out and have more adventures, I mean, I've got a lot of stories, a huge backlog of adventures. But eventually, I mean, they are finite. We will run out eventually. So we got to cover the ones that are happening in real time. And we also have to discuss, philosophy and stuff. So I figure we have our show, and then if there is to be like a subsection that's just my stories, we can just rip those out of the show and collect them individually, separately. So I don't want to hold posting our show back just to gather more stories. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, I mean, definitely don't placate me if you think differently. But I feel like we should start
as
posting
a
these.
sidebar, like removed from the episode. I think that, yeah, I mean, we've got enough at this point. I think that my thing with like when to start releasing is like you want to just get like maybe 4 or 5, so that way that that like even if you miss a week, you still got one, and you're good. You have like a thing, but we've got enough now that we can totally just like start releasing them.
Yeah, we just.
I'm not. I mean, I know that I have a very, thank you, sir, a very low standard when it comes to like, okay, this thing is done, I'm ready to just put it out. Than
right.
Like a lot of people, because a lot of people want to spend more time on it. But
yeah, I think if we just
we need to like make it, as you were saying, like we don't need to like perfect it because there's gonna be 100, maybe.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
100
episodes.
Yeah, I would be chuffed if that were the thing. I'd be super like thumbs up all around. Let's keep the ball rolling if you gents are into it.
100
and
will be fucking probably perfect.
Yeah. And if you've got life stuff to attend to, I'll get someone else to sit in that chair for the week and then
like
catch
ask
you
questions
up.
like, what the hell were you thinking?
Yeah, right? Because eventually you're going to get numb to my ridiculousness.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always like, well, yeah, of course he did that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like,
I mean, that makes total sense for you.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, you look at like any podcast that's been around for a while, like if you look at their early stuff, like, it's usually rough.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's not as good, it's just less refined.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, you look at early, like, episodes like Radiolab, even.
I don't know what that is.
It's through NPR.
Oh, okay.
But, like, Radiolab, like, you go back to, like, really, really early stuff, like, yeah, it's just not as refined or streamlined. Yeah. It's not bad. It was always good.
Right. Yeah.
It was always super interesting.
Yeah, and I think the sooner we start getting these out, the sooner we'll find our audience.
Yeah.
Get some valuable negative feedback
from
the internet.
The real key to the, like, at least the podcast game is consistency and the long con. Like,
yes, yeah, and I'm super good at the long con.
Put out like 2 and find an audience, like there's
Plus,
like a whole bunch of podcasts I follow that are on 4 or 5 years.
I like that every episode of this, for the most part, even though we have kind of the meta story of forming the podcast, I like that you can theoretically listen to them in any order. It's just us talking about stuff. I think when they come about organically, I think just us being interesting is good, and of course, I'm always going to be talking about me. It's the thing I like to do. And now that I've got a microphone here, we'll just capture all that greatness vomiting out of my mouth. But the other note, so that one was kind of disheartening because I was like, oh, but I like what we're doing. I think what we're doing that's good, right? I mean, if it's not, feel free to speak up.
And that's the other thing, too. It's like, okay, we may be really enjoying ourselves, but, like, as a third party listening, like,
right.
I don't know, like, is it not interesting to listen to.
Right, and so he didn't. He always says when he gives me feedback, he says it's it's always a great listen. Like he has a great time. He laughs. He loves it. I just don't think that it's what he initially was going for.
Right.
I think he just wanted me to tell stories, which I'm doing. But I like this, talking format where the stories come about, fleshed out and organic, and there's stuff orbiting those stories that give it context.
Mm-hmm.
And then, later on, we can extract those stories if there's a high enough demand or whatever, and then, put them in a separate thing.
Be like, Nash-only podcast.
That's right, yeah.
Just the meat.
Yeah, just the meat. Which brings me to the next point, which is what I found hilarious. This was his final bit of feedback. So he had just listened to the episode where we were spitballing the names, and I finally came back with my brilliant idea that I thought was brilliant. The national pastime.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, quote, I loved the awkward silence when you announced national pastime. The boys are so sweet to not tell you that is a terrible title. It's terrible.
Well,
Long pause. Terrible. I don't think we found the name yet. We'll keep looking.
That means it has to be the name.
They're just so nice to not tell you that that's such a bad name.
Now, dear listener,
Is that it? Are you guys nice?
I remember when we were going over the names, and that came up, and there was a pause, but it wasn't a pause of like, oh God.
You guys were just overwhelmed by my brilliance, right?
I was basically just mulling it over my head, and I'm just kind of like, looking like, and like nodding like, yeah, that could work. There was that kind of pause.
Right, yeah, I was like, son of a bitch, are these guys just nodding
Like,
at
it wasn't like
my
just a blank
madness?
stare, and we're just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, have I gone off the Nicolas Cage deep end already, and no one's just telling me that everything's a bad idea?
I thought it was a good name.
Thank
For
you.
the record.
Thank you. Also, we've got the Nash.
Yeah.
I mean, we could theoretically have any, because there's no other words than the Nash. So we could change the name to anything.
Yeah.
But not only have we gone like 5 or 6 episodes since then and introduced the podcast as
calling it
such.
that.
Yeah, but I don't know. Is it just me that we've done it so many times that it's grown on me? I like it for the reasons described originally.
I like it, although it's still in my head every time I have to correct myself. Because the first thing I always think of is the National Review.
Oh, right.
Which I think that was one of the thing, like one of the names I thought up, just because that like popped in my head using the whole national thing.
Right.
So I keep always like thinking in my head, no, that we're getting ready to do a show like
We'll save
national pastime.
We'll save that for our product reviews. That'll be the National Review.
There we go.
Yeah, we'll have segment intros where it's like National Review, viewer letters. It'll be neither of those things because there's nothing to view and nobody writes letters. So we'll have viewer letters.
You can go to like the whole celebrity mean tweets thing. We can just like
read. Oh, I love that. I love when people read just the worst shit about themselves.
We can read. You have a little section where we read off like the horrible comments we get on YouTube.
But not always, because you don't want to encourage people to just write negative stuff in hopes that we read it. Mm-hmm. You want it to be like naturally occurring. So we'll get Sound Guy Ben to filter through a bunch of them for the ones that seem very genuine, like the people that genuinely don't like us, and then we'll read those. But yeah, so I guess I'll just put it out to the audience. If you've got any better suggestions for a name, we're still taking them out of kindness. But my mind is made up. The national pastime until something better comes around. Maybe we'll name one of our segments.
Maybe there will be something comes up and we're like, you know what, that is awesome. And maybe that'll be like, that's the new name.
Yeah, and then we'll change the name, and then this part of the show will have still been the national pastime. Then it'll just be the podcast formerly known as the national pastime.
People will be really confused later.
Yeah. We'll whatever. They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Our target demographic is an intelligent bunch, I'd wager. Or insane, so they wouldn't care. Either one. But yeah, and then he said another disheartening thing right after that, his final thing.
Aww.
He was like, well, don't worry. We'll keep looking. Maybe after we wrap the whole thing up, we'll get 100 episodes in, and then, maybe after the fact, we'll just put a name on there. Like, wait, wow, you really don't like this name. Like, he was pretty adamant about not liking it.
Not only that, but thinking also, like, really long term. Like,
right?
We're gonna wait till 100 episodes in to give it a name. At that point, publish it.
He did say that he was keen to do it forever.
Yeah.
If we were, but he was concerned because his primary goal was to get my stories like on lockdown. But once again, gotta, there's only so many. There's a lot. I mean, we could probably go 100 episodes just on my stories.
Yeah.
But one day, they'll
at some point be like, all right, that about covers it.
Yeah.
It's like,
all right. Well, I guess.
All right, episode 218.
Yeah. I guess that's it. So I'm gonna take a couple years off while I go get some new stories, and we'll reconvene then. But yeah, so that's notes from the man. I mean, positive. He was positive all the way through. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. Like, he was very positive, but like, he is inherently a positive person. So if you take in context what he was saying with his positivity, if you scale it for inflation of positivity, his positivity, that was him being negative. His version of negativity, still very positive. But it, it was like, oh, I like this. I like what this is now. But so hopefully no one takes that the wrong way, especially the man, because I appreciate the feedback.
I think it's hilarious that he hates the name.
Yeah,
like it's really against.
And the more I thought about it, I was like, ha! Wait till he hears the future episodes, because we really go hard with the name. Like that made me laugh. And as Ben said, well, it pretty much has to be the name now.
Yeah, we branded it.
I mean, if the producer doesn't like the name, then the audience is going to hate it, which I also just very much enjoy. So that wraps up notes from the man. So I can wad this up here. So our sponsor for the day was is this the paper? Yeah, okay. So our sponsor for the day was the Major Airlines. You might recall that we opened this episode talking about, jokingly, that using the Major Airlines kind of like getting raped. I mean, obviously not really. That's a gross, hyperbolic sort of statement. But you get what I'm saying, everyone in the room and
you
the wider
don't
world.
Generally leave happy.
No one does. So here's just a recent sort of smattering of different news headlines and things that have happened just within the past few weeks regarding the airlines. Bear in mind that they've been on a downward slide, losing luggage and infuriating people for about a decade now. They weren't ever great, but for the past 10 years they've been getting worse and worse and worse, much like a lot of the world. But
I hear like there was like the glory days in like the 50s.
Yeah, the late from the mid to late 40s to the mid 60s, where people would still starting with the 60s, they stopped wearing the suits to fly, but they still treated it as an occasion.
Right.
They still had proper stewardesses and services and weren't treated.
Well, and like one thing I've never really looked into, because I know the probably biggest contributing factor is, like, I've never really looked at doing like a comparison of airline rates when adjusting for inflation and everything.
Right.
Like say in 1955 versus today to take a flight from Indiana to Florida.
Right.
I don't know, like maybe back then it cost like $2,000, so like you expected a much higher.
It was adjusted for inflation and adjusted for expectation. Like, a lot of people didn't have the luxury, not just the luxury currency, but the luxury time to go fly and whatever. It was a to-do. It was a decent to-do. It was a thing, and as it became more common, familiarity breeds contempt. So people took it for granted, and the airlines took the people for granted, and then it all just went down. It all went down.
And I think that's part of the problem, where basically people got to the point where they're like, you know what, I don't care about the service. I just want you to get from point A to point B as cheaply as possible.
Yep, and then that became the new standard.
There we are.
Airlines had to compete to match people like me who were like climbing into the back of cargo planes as cheaply as possible, which is a thing I have done, by the way.
Fly freight, yeah.
Yeah. I've been freight before. People aren't cargo, but they can be. But yeah, and then the major airlines, if the market shifts hard enough in that direction, and that's the only money to be made, then they have to cut corners wherever possible to accommodate. But they did it too hard, and now they are lacking things like places to put your legs. That's a thing almost everyone has, is legs. And you don't have anywhere to put them on a plane now, at all, unless you shill out extra money.
Yeah.
Or if you happen to be anyone but me and you've got things, nowhere to put them. No, sir, no things.
Well, and now they're charging. Right. Well, I know some they aren't letting you take like a laptop.
That's right.
Carry on.
That's right.
And
Too many
now
bombs.
it's, like, charging more for carry on.
Yes. Yeah, carry-on bags cost money, and now checking your bag was the first to get costed money, so I always just had a carry-on.
Same here.
But now the carry-on costs as well for most airlines, not all, but a lot. Food, water. I'm pretty soon they're gonna. I mean, this sounds like a comical exaggeration, but I envision the day, if they continue the current trend, where the toilets will be pay toilets on the plane, where you have to swipe a credit card to use the toilet.
Yeah.
To get into the lavatory to
I've
sex
heard
with the stewardess.
stuff like maybe an exaggeration, but like Ryanair is one I always hear is infamous for charging for everything.
Yeah, I've flown them quite a few times.
But at the same time, they always have like the cheapest airfares.
Yeah, I mean you don't always. Cheap is cheap, but sometimes expensive is cheaper. I mean, you want to get from A to B, so you buy a ticket, but sometimes you really want to know that you're actually going to get from A to B at the time that you're planning to get from A to B.
Well, then also, sure, the ticket costs this, but then you add in all these fees.
Right.
And now the actual cost is this,
yes.
which is about the same or a little more expensive than you would have got with one of the more quote-unquote expensive airlines.
Yeah, so you got to do your research. But recently British Airways flights shut off for 3 days due to IT problems that many blame for India job outsourcing. So they outsourced all their IT, routing the planes and everything to India, and they got hacked, and they had to shut the whole airlines down for like 3 days, and anyone who was flying British Airways was not happy during that 3-day time period.
And the big problem there basically was that they had no backup.
Right, yeah. They didn't have any redundancies in their protocols.
Which then shows that because basically they outsourced all this to an IT company in India that they were responsible to do the backup, but the fact that this happened,
right,
basically also shows that they never tested the backup, and 2, they discovered eventually they never even implemented a backup,
right, yeah,
which from both my personal experience working with
you're an IT fellow, aren't you?
Not really. I basically work in an industry though where we do a lot of system development, and I've worked with the software developers, where basically I'm telling them what we want,
right?
And because, especially not so much at my current job, but at previous job, because I had a fair amount of computer knowledge and like coding, like. I was kind of like a good in-between person because like I could tell them in terms that they would understand.
Right.
As opposed to like, jargon in the insurance business. But at the same time, like I'm doing the work so I know how it needs to be done so I can test if what they're doing is correct. But yeah, when working with, because we outsourced stuff as well.
Right.
And I can't speak for the entire culture, obviously. But my personal experience, and I've heard from other people who've had the same experience, that there seems to be a very cultural thing with Indians where it's a whole saving face thing where they won't say that they don't know how to do something.
Yes.
They'll just say, yes, we can do it. Oh, yeah, no problem.
That's a Japanese thing, too.
Yeah,
it's very Japanese
there's the whole saving face thing. Like, they don't want to...
Like, even if they have no idea what you're talking about, they just nod, and they're like, got it. I got it.
And that's something that is very real that companies run into.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely need a cultural liaison in those situations. But yeah, that's just a thing. There was a gay family boarding an airline a couple weeks ago. It was a man and his husband. They had 3 or 4 children and one of the man's elderly mothers. So it was like an old lady in her, I don't know, I would say 80s. I don't know if that's accurate, but she was older. I mean, she was quite old. The man and the other man who were legally married and their 3 children, and they called for family boarding because one of the children was pretty young. So they went to go board because they had an elderly lady. They needed to help. Yeah, she's too old to be like boarding a plane by herself. They had a kid that's too young to board a plane by itself. And then they have 2 other kids that need to be wrangled, and also they're legally married. And they were denied on the grounds that they weren't a real family. And
nice.
Yes, and like they like said this in front of everyone, and like that was their policy.
Like,
I think it was Southwest Airlines, but they were
So,
they
I
were
mean,
just
even
like they were just like you're not a real family. Those were their words.
It was like the dad and like an uncle.
Yeah.
Like, is that not a real family?
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you draw the line? How about just here's 2 people with an old lady and some kids?
Yeah.
Who cares?
They're all traveling together.
Who cares? Yeah. All you're just being rude and disrespectful. Like, really ruffled my feathers. I mean, I'm not a gay guy with children, as far as I know, on either count. But man, that'd be so shitty just to even be in that room. Like, I don't like injustice. Like, that's just so.
Yeah, just
like I felt bad.
I'd just be sitting there going, what?
Yeah, I feel bad living in a time in history in what's supposed to be a first world country, even though it's really not. But in any country that's supposed to have, developed amenities where discrimination based on nothing is a socially accepted standard. Like, it very much bothers me. So that bothered me. Did you hear about the leggings controversy?
Yeah.
Where 2 girls went to go board a plane, but they were wearing leggings.
Now with that, from the initial story, I was like, what? That's retarded. Now, after I read some more about it, it's not actually as bad.
Still bad, not as bad.
It's still stupid.
Because they were flying on employee standby, so they had to represent the airline's dress code.
Yes. And then, so like they were basically out of the dress code, and in order to get those tickets or those seats that they were using, they were supposed to be in dress code.
Right. But they were young. I mean, they were like, 12 and 13. And they weren't dressed like... They weren't wearing no clothes. They were wearing like a sweater and leggings, which is now normal attire for society.
Yeah. Like, I agree, it's ludicrous.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, well,
they weren't
following the rules. They agreed to
right.
follow,
Yeah, I mean, I understand...
But at the
intellectually,
same time,
but I find it ridiculous.
Yes.
It's one of those things where the rules exist for a reason, but no one's looking at the actual rules and who they're being applied to. Like, I could understand if this was family of the employee, not the employees themselves.
Correct.
And they were children that could never be mistaken for employees. So yeah, I do take issue with that.
Yeah.
But also, the airlines didn't handle it tactfully. Like, they don't seem to handle anything with tact or grace or courtesy.
If anything, when it's brought up, they just double down on it.
They do, which, I mean, a certain part of me respects, like, because I always say, if you're going to be a douche, don't try to hide it, just embrace it, just go all the way. And to their credit, they do. For example, there was a doctor recently dragged off of a flight, and he had his nose broken because he was already seated on the flight, and they told him he had to leave because the flight was overbooked and they needed to put someone else there. And he was like, I'm a doctor, and I have to get to these rotations immediately.
Right, he's like, basically, I have patients.
I have things I have to do as a doctor. And they were like, no, get off the plane. And he refused to leave, so they drug him off and broke his nose in the process.
Now, like, and same thing with that, like, when I was reading more about it again, a lot of that stuff is all coming kind of like secondhand accounts, so I don't know if it's the veracity of it, but one thing I heard was like he originally had volunteered to get off, but once he learned like what time the new flight was going to come,
he was gonna.
Okay, well, no, actually, I can't do that because I have patients I need to see.
Yeah, he was trying to accommodate, but the next flight was too late, is what I heard. Like, and that's understandable. You know, he made the decision based on false information at the time.
Right, and then basically they're like, well, nope, too late. You volunteered. You got to go now.
Right, and that's
then they called the police, which again, I take issue with.
Right, because, like the police don't have better things to do.
Well, not only that, but it'd be one thing if airport security, like their own security, removed him.
Right.
But when they're bringing in, the local police.
Right.
To basically be the strong arm for this corporation.
Right, yeah, that bothers me on
He's not unlawfully doing anything.
That is true, yeah, he's...
Although, I mean, I guess technically, I don't know,
I'm sure there's bylaws
some
within
kind of FAA stuff where, like, technically it is breaking the law if he's refusing.
Right,
like
I'm
an order from the pilot or something.
Yeah.
So maybe there is grounds for that, but still, it just doesn't sit well with me.
Because the pilot's technically a captain, and you have to obey all captain's orders on a vessel, or you are breaking the law.
Right.
That is true. As far as I know. I don't know if that's still true. That was true at one point.
Well, and I think it is, like, part of, like, regulations with the FAA that basically the captains, while you're on the plane, the captain's orders,
you are subject to the captain's orders.
You have to do what he says.
Captain's orders are law.
Within their rights to remove you.
As far as I know. There was a stroller that was ripped away from a lady on a plane. And as it was ripped away from her by one of the airline employees, it almost hit another kid. And then there was, like, the airline guy was screaming at the lady who had the stroller. And then all the kids are crying. And this whole thing was filmed by a third party, if you've seen that.
Well, and the whole, like, doctor removal thing was all filmed, too.
Yeah. There was recently, this just happened a couple days ago, an airline worker tried to wrestle a violin from a musician that was on a plane. I don't know the context. So I don't know if he was trying to...
Was he like playing
I don't know if he was playing the violin. Maybe he was real bad at it, and the employee was trying to do a favor to everybody. I don't have the context. But based on everything else, I have to imagine this man was like an antique Stradivarius collector, and this other guy was like a Nazi Gestapo bootstepper. And
it could be somebody who's like, and the violinist is like, fuck no, I'm not checking this.
Yeah, it could have been, a priceless piece of musical, artistry that this freaking slack-jawed mouth breather is trying to rip out of his hands. I don't know. It could go the other way. Like I said, maybe it was just some cheap-ass violin that he was playing poorly on the plane.
Yeah, again, it could be the guy was being an asshole and, like, playing it during the flight, and was like, and people were complaining.
Yeah. So, like, I am trying to watch National Treasure, sir. Please, cool it with the fiddling while we're here, even though I do like a good fiddle. Just the whole thing, and it's just, the list goes on and on. I mean, they've been cutting back on their quote-unquote amenities, leg space, bag space, food and drink, common human decency. They've eliminated all those things.
Well, and I know a lot of the planes, too, are now kind of at the point where they're reaching what they consider to be the safe amount of, like, miles.
Yes.
Basically, the aging equipment.
Antiquity. Yes.
That, some of these, not every airline, but some of them have, like, planes that are 15, 20 years old, which obviously they see a lot of use.
Right.
Talking, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of miles. And they're basically kind of reaching the end of their feasible lifespan. But they kind of just keep patching them back together.
The end of their marketable lifespan, we'll say.
Yeah. As far as, like, where they're saying, like, okay, at this point, we're 99.9% certain it's not going to just disintegrate in midair.
Right, yeah.
Or catastrophically fail.
Yeah, you can never be, there's always that mathematical buffer. You can never say with 100% certainty anything.
Right.
But
it starts getting to the point like, well, now we're only like 94% certain.
Yeah, when you dip when you dip into the 80s, you start like, how many dice are we rolling here? Like, there's a lot of variables you got cooking around. So with all that, and with the major airlines just being in the headlines all the time with some just infuriating stuff, let's talk about actual stories, real life experiences here.
So what are some of your personal experiences
Let's talk real life airline horror stories. You got any? Do you have terrible flight experiences?
My problems usually aren't so much with the airline itself.
The airport, the whole airport experience, from airport to boarding the plane, to landing the plane, to getting out and leaving the other airport.
I've had problems where they do, like, last-minute gate changes, and it's always, like, it's on the completely opposite side of the airport, and you need to be there in, like, 5 minutes.
Right.
Or, like, where they don't notify you of that.
Right.
And unless you're checking it yourself, like, by going up to one of the big,
display?
Like one of those big, like, displays where it shows, like, all arrivals and departures. Yeah. Not just your gate, but, like, the whole airport.
Right.
Like, there was a time where I was flying back from Georgia to Indianapolis, and, like, yeah, they changed like the gate that my flight was coming to, but they never made an announcement at that gate. It didn't show up on that gate's display.
I would call that a win. Is that the worst you've ever had? You never had your luggage taken
I
or
lost?
lost?
I just bring carry-on.
Or
so,
you never been like beat up by the TSA?
No.
You never been thrown in a brig?
No.
You never had pieces of the plane blow off while you're flying?
I've never done any international.
You've never been
flying,
hauled away?
So, I've never done any international flying, so I think that kind of limits things.
Maybe.
I mean, most of the problems I have are usually with other passengers.
I do take umbrage with almost everyone else on the plane.
I was annoyed that I flew to Las Vegas.
I exclusively fly Crying Baby Airlines.
Yeah.
So it's the only airline I'll fly because of some gypsy curse that was placed on me, I think.
That I had like a butane lighter.
I got a good story about this. Keep going.
That I bought when I was in New York a few years earlier.
You know you can take those on the plane now in your pocket? It's totally fine.
According to...
Now it is.
Well, and the thing is, like, apparently...
Because it didn't used to be.
I don't know if they change, like... It's probably just... it's probably just how strict the TSA agents are wherever you are. Because it was never... I had it in my pocket.
Right.
I pulled it out of my pocket, put it in the little tray that goes through the X-ray when I'm going through security. No problem in Indianapolis. Didn't care about it. No problem when I was leaving Vegas.
Right.
But I had a layover in, I think, Missouri. And there, even, I just, like, same thing, you're going through, like, because I did go out to, like, the concourse, and
right.
I had, like, a 2-hour layover.
Yeah.
So I had to go through security again. And again, like, all I have is my, like, carry-on stuff in my pockets. But yeah, there's, like, yeah, you can't take that. And I'm like, really? It's like, I've been through, like...
Stuff happens to me all the time.
Like 2 other airports, and, like, I mean, I put it in the tray every time, and everyone was fine with it.
I went through 10 countries with this, and 2 of them were this one.
Yeah.
Like, no, you can't have it now.
And the thing is, like, it was it's not like it's irreplaceable, but it wasn't like, just like a, go to the gas station and buy it. It was a particular novelty lighter, essentially, that I don't really know where I could buy other than at the store in New York that I bought it from.
All right, well, now we're getting into nightmare territory. At least that's, something that you're not quite sure.
But yeah, like, I would say me personally, I've never had, like, a horrible experience where, like, they beat me up or something.
I've got so many, I don't even know. We're already at, like, 40 minutes, because the first 8 minutes don't count. We were talking about whatever the heck we were talking about.
Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, and other things. But I've got so many... Because I originally intended to tell them all in this episode. I don't know if I can fit them all.
All right, so let's just do, like, what's just the worst one, the absolute.
Oh my! I don't. They're all so many. I was red listed in China for making bombs. They thought I was making bombs.
Did you have, like, residue
and
or
they
something
broke,
that they detected?
They took and broke my passport. They fried my passport.
Yeah, we were saying that.
Did I ever tell that story in its entirety?
No, like I remember you mentioned that they fried your passport.
Yeah.
Because, like, they were saying that you were suspected of making bombs in the airport.
Yes, I was suspected of being an explosive device maker. To what end, I don't know. But so, little backstory. Most of China at the time didn't work. Like, they got a lot of things that don't work. Just a lot of robots and automatic
what
doors.
year was this, would you guess?
This story takes place in 2013.
Okay, so it's semi-recently.
Yeah, not like a decade ago or anything. It's less than 5 years ago. Was it 2013? Yeah, this story takes place in 2013. So I'm going to leave China. I'd already been in and out of China a few times, but leaving China, and you got your checked bag, you got your carry-on bag. You can pretty much have whatever you want in your checked bag because you don't have access to it, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, if you have a gun, you put it in your checked bag and you declare that you have it. Mm-hmm. And they store it and lock it up so it doesn't matter. I mean, things need to get from A to B, and they usually fly, as long as they're not, like, pressurized or depressurized so they explode. So you can pretty much have whatever you want, and I'm no stranger to air travel or international travel. I know the rules. I knew them at the time, and So I have my checked bag and my carry-on bag, and my checked bag is going through their little scanner machine. And this is one of two things in China that actually worked. And it started beeping, and they were like, "Hey, it's detecting something in your checked bag. We need to search it." And I was like, "Yeah, go nuts." So they're searching it, and they found a Zippo lighter. And they were like, "You can't have this." And I was like, "Of course you can. You're mistaken." And they were like, "No, you can't. It'll blow up." And I was like, "No, it won't. I know how lighters work.
It's not pressurized.
Yeah, I know how
it's
lighters...
It's literally a piece of cotton soaked in lighter fluid."
Yeah, I was like, I know how a lighter works, and I've flown around with it. I flew to here with it, as a matter of fact. And I've flown out of here with it, as a matter of fact." And they were like, "You can't have it in your checked bag." And I was like, "No, you're mistaken. Current rules say you can't have it on your carry-on bag because they don't want you burning the plane down while you're in it. But you can have it in your checked bag." And they were like, "No, this is China. You definitely can't have it at all. We're going to have to take it." And I was like, "Well, you can't have it. That is a Zippo from World War II gifted to me by my grandfather. You can't have it." And they're like, "You can't have it." And I was like, "You can't have it." So we went back and forth for a while. And I was like, "Look, you know what? It's just the casing that's from World War II. I replace the insides every now and again. You know what? I just replaced the insides. They're like $5 for a cup. I just replaced the insides like a couple of years ago. Just take the inside. I'll keep the shell. You can't make a bomb with the shell of a Zippo."
Yeah, it's literally just a chunk of metal.
Yeah, and they were like, "Okay." So they took the inside of my Zippo, which I had just replaced, so it wasn't the original one, which I still do have the original insides. I just kept it because, it's cool, because it's old. So I kept the casing, and I was like, "All right, that's fine." And they were like, "Okay, well, we'll take this, but we have to make a note on your file that we found an incendiary device on you. And we have to note, the day and the time and all that." I was like, "Fine, whatever." So they fill out the paperwork, and they're like, "All right, get out of here." I'm like, "Great." So now I go on the line for the carry-on bag. So I'm going through the line. I got a little backpack. Put it in the machine. It's like, beep, boop, 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 boop. Stuff's going on in here. We got to take a look. And I was like, "Sure." And I was like, "Hey, you got anything weird in here?" And I'm like, I don't know. Just search it. I don't care. Like, there's nothing secret inside of this bag. It's probably just a spiral notebook, which always looks like a bomb. Anyway, so they search it, and they're like, "What is this?" And they pull out a chunk of flint that I forgot I had in there. For those of you that don't know, flint is a type of rock that when you strike with steel, it creates a spark. You use it for camping and primitive living situations, for like making fire when you're out in the wilderness. Creates a very hot spark for igniting, tinder, burnable things, dried leaves and grasses and things like that to make it like a campfire.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about if it gets wet.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it if it gets wet. It's pretty handy. And so the guy was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Oh, that's flint. I forgot that was in there. That's a piece of flint." And he's like, "Well, what do you do with it?" And I was like, "Oh, well, it's a rock, sort of. It's like a mineral, I think. It's definitely a composite of some kind.
Yeah.
It's been around. I think the Chinese probably perfected it originally, so you should probably know. But whatever. It's a hunk that you strike with steel, and it makes a spark, and you use it for camping. That's what I was using it for. Make a fire out in the wilderness to be cozy with." And he was like, "Oh, well, you can't have this on the plane." And I was like, "Well, you know what? That makes sense. It is a fire making tool."
Yeah,
I mean, I don't have
its primary purpose.
Yeah,
is
its primary purpose is to make sparks. That's true. In all honesty, I forgot it was in my backpack. Forgot it was in my carry-on. I would have removed it if I'd have remembered. Inexpensive thing to replace. Who cares? I mean, I didn't have any steel on me, but I'm sure I could have beat it against something on the airplane to make a fire if I'd wanted to. And so the guy was like, "Well, I got to take this." I'm like, "Well, you know what? Go ahead. Because I forgot it was in there. I don't care. Who cares?" And he's like, "Sure, no problem. I just got to make a little mark on your file here that I found an incendiary device on you." And I was like, "Sure, no problem." So he pulls up this file, and he's like, "Wait a minute.
Wait.
Yeah.
Now you got 2 strikes.
Yeah, 5 minutes ago, they found you with some incendiary devices." And I was like, "Well, for some context here." And he's like, "Yeah, we don't have time for that. That's too many. That's not That's an awful lot of stuff here. You gotta go to the special
It's
area.
allowed one bomb, but
Yeah.
two, no.
Yeah,
Too
so
many.
basically what they had deduced was I had various incendiary devices, aka, bomb parts, to be combined at a later date. And so I had to go to this holding area where they wrote up this huge file on me, and they took my passport, and then they had to review all the footage of me in the airport. And I'd been there for a long time because a couple of buddies of mine were getting married in the States. And as a wedding gift, I was getting them a bottle of this intense Chinese alcohol called baijiu, which literally just means like white alcohol. It's like a basically kind of rubbing alcohol stuff, but it's, you drink it. But its nickname is the White Devil because it's you drink it and it's immediately the start and end to your night.
So it's like their version of Everclear.
It's lightning in a bottle. And so I got this bottle of it, and I was hanging out with this English guy, and I could not get this smuggled out of China in time. I was trying all my old tricks, couldn't get it out of the country, and the next thing that I was going to do wasn't going to get it to them in time, because I only had one more trick, which is to personally smuggle it on my person, which I'm pretty good at, but I didn't have time to do that because I wasn't going to the States. I was going to be gone for a while, so I was trying to smuggle it out via other avenues, and China was not having it. And I was like, well, man, looks like we're going to have to take care of this bottle before I can leave China. And he was like, yeah, sounds like a plan. So we slammed it. We spent all night drinking this freaking liquid meth. And I was like, well, I'm off to the airport now. What could possibly go wrong? So they reviewed 6 hours of me being just out of my mind, sprinting to the toilet every 45 minutes, and then just losing consciousness in the atrium every now and again. And now I'm trying to be suave and explain to them that I'm not trying to blow up their airplane.
And they're watching the video, you're like, clearly this man is crazy.
Yeah, and I'm just so drunk. I'm like, well, excuse me, it was for having the rocks and the sparks. It was just, you don't know me! I'm just so drunk. So they reviewed all this footage, determined that I wasn't an immediate threat. So I wasn't blacklisted from the country, but I was red listed, and then I'm put on a watch list. So I can come back, but they've got their eye on me.
Scrutinized.
Right, yeah, I'm going to be scrutinized. They got their eye on me, but they had to keep scanning my passport into this machine, because they've all got a little microchip in them now that brings up all your vital data. And they just kept scanning it in their shitty, homemade garage sale passport scanning machine, and it eventually just fried my passport. It fried the microchip so it wouldn't read correctly after that, and then they let me go, but they red listed me for attempted too many incendiary devices.
For building bombs in the airport. With
So then
flint and a lighter.
so then I get to the Philippines, and they scanned me in just fine, but when I went to go leave, they said, hey, did you scan in with a different passport? And I was like, no. And they were like, are you a Filipino citizen, or do you have a Filipino passport? And I was like, not yet, but I'll take one if you got one. And they're like, well, the computer's showing that you scanned in with a Filipino passport, but you're trying to scan out with this other passport. And I was like, yeah. Then I finally realized that China broke my passport, but I wasn't scanning right, and their paperwork wasn't matching up. So they had to keep walking me back and forth through the Filipino border and through customs to
keep rescanning.
Yeah, to keep rescanning me, but also manually filling out old school paperwork. But they stamped me in more times than they stamped me out. So I'm technically, a part of me is still in the Philippines as a Filipino citizen. So I'm still in the Philippines as a Filipino citizen.
So on paper, you're still in the Philippines and a citizen.
Yes, of the Philippines. And I'm also here, and I'm also... so then I went to Australia for a while, and then when I was trying to leave Australia, the guy was like, hey, did you scan in with an Australian passport? And I was like, no. And he was like, it's telling me that you scanned in with an Australian passport, but you're trying to scan out with this passport. And I was like, oh yeah, China broke my passport.
But you're also still in the Philippines.
Yeah, and he was just like, And the whole reason I got the microchips is because none of the customs agents want to take the time to fill out the huge stack of forms necessary. Yeah. And so now, every time I go to a place, everyone's got to fill out the huge stack of forms. But that was China. One time, I was leaving Thailand, but I was actually there illegally, and...
So, did you go into the country illegally, or did you, like, overstay your visa?
I grossly overstayed my visa.
Okay.
And I had no money. I was flat broke. I used up all my money to get this one flight out of Thailand. And they were like, look, you are here illegally, like super illegally. One of two things is going to happen. You're either going to go to our airport jail, Brig, and you're going to stay there for a while, a couple weeks maybe. Then we'll let you out, and then you can leave the country. Or you can pay this huge fine, and then you can leave. And I was like, look, I was actually able to sweet talk my way out of this, because I was like, look, your jails and Brig are overcrowded. You don't have the space or the funds to maintain me being in there. And I don't have the funds to pay you any money. And you want to punish me because I'm here for too long. But if you throw me in jail, I'm going to miss this flight. And then I'm not going to have any more money to get another flight out of here.
I'm just
so
be here
I'm going to
longer.
be here indefinitely. And I was like, look, I don't have money or time. You don't have space or money. You let me go on that plane. I never tell anyone, and I never come back. What say you to that? And the guy was like, fine. I mean, it was like 15 minutes of negotiating, but that was what it boiled down to. And he was like, fine. And then I left. It was all squaresies. And then I did come back a couple months later, and they smashed a bottle of rum in my luggage. And I'm pretty sure they knew it was me, because then they tried to fly away without me.
Well, and I've heard from various sources that in many foreign countries, it's not really unusual for basically bribing.
Yeah, you can bribe your way out of anything.
And basically the key phrase is that's like, was there like a fee I could pay?
Yes, yeah.
You don't straight up ask him like, well, will you take a bribe?
Yeah,
it's
you
just
just
basically, is there like a fee or like a fine I could pay?
Yeah, I'd be willing to pay the fine if there was a fine.
And they're like, all right, yeah, it's $100. And you're like, there you go.
Nothing in the world has a fixed price, and everything can be negotiated. Pro tip to the listeners: if you're a silver-tongued devil like myself, who has
you got some cash on you.
Yeah, I've tongue bathed the Blarney Stone, man. I was in Ireland just licking that thing. Got all the diseases. Got all the Blarney powers. I could talk my way out. So I managed to talk my way out of Thailand, to fly over to Japan. Again, I've spent years there, as you know, and I'm back and forth there at least once a year.
I've heard that the Japanese airlines are actually really nice.
Very nice. Very, very nice. So in Thailand one time, the second or third time I was leaving, all right, you know how you buy an airline ticket, or if you're me, you come upon an airline ticket, and it's for a specific day and time, right? Mm-hmm. That's when the plane leaves. Because that's how you do tickets, right? So I go to the check-in gate, and the lady's like, hey, you're super early. You're like 26 hours early. You can't check in for this flight yet. Go do something else. Come back here like a couple hours before the plane leaves and we can check in. And I was like, all right, that's fair. So I do what I do, and I like camp out in the airport for a full day because it's a free place to stay. And so I camped out in the airport. Next day, it's like 4 hours before the plane leaves. Go to the gate. They're not officially open yet, or the check-in gate. They're not officially open yet. The lady's like, hey, this gate's going to be open in 2 hours. Come back then. Or maybe it was 3 hours. It was like an hour before the flight. Like, come back then. Like, all right, fine, no worries. Come back in that time frame. It's an hour before the plane is supposed to leave. I go to check in, and the lady's like, oh, the check-in's closed. And I was like, well, you keep telling me it's closed. When's it going to be open? And she's like, oh, no, it was open, and then we checked everyone in, and now it's closed.
You had a 10-minute window.
And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, yeah, that plane's about to take off. And I was like, what do you mean take off? It doesn't leave for another hour. And she was like, yeah, but everybody checked in, so we just decided we'd fly out early. And I was like, you can't do that. First of all, everyone is not checked in because I'm still here. Ta-da! Yeah, I'm still here. And the lady was like, man, you're never going to catch that flight. Like, they're getting ready to leave. And I was like, get me on that plane. And so she was like, okay, I think we could get you. We might be able to catch it in time if we used all these back alleyways in the airport that you're not really allowed to go through if you're just a regular customer. Like, all right, let's do it. And then I picked up my gigantic ass bag that I'd been hauling around, and she's like, "Oh my god, you have checked luggage?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "This'll never work. We have to go through the special security scan." So then I had to go through the special security scan, and then this guy's like, "What are you trying to do?" And I'm like, "Oh, my plane is like pulling out of the gate." And he's like, "This'll never work." So then I had to get like a special like tram ride through the back alleys and like board the plane. Yeah, and I got to like board the plane like action hero style. And damn if I didn't catch that plane. But they tried to fly away without me with the rationale that everyone was on board, so they just fly away early. So that's not how things work.
Did they already pull away from like the
third world country?
And you had to like take the ladder.
They were like, they were starting to, and then they were like, "Oh, here comes some asshole." Like, no, you're the assholes. You don't just fly away an hour early. In other parts of the world, these things are tightly regulated. Just flying around willy-nilly.
It's like, "Oh, no, everyone's here. Yeah, we're just going to leave a couple hours early."
Yeah, it's whatever. It's not. It's not whatever. This isn't a plane with 3 people on it. There's like 300 people here.
Well, like, I've never had a problem, like, I've had it where maybe the gate isn't open.
Right.
Because, like, yeah, there's been times where, like, I've flown to New York or something, and, like, it's a super early flight.
Right.
And, like, leaves at, like, 4 a.m. And it's like, well... And it's usually, like, I'm getting home from work the night before at, like... And this is when I used to work late, so I'd get home at, like, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And be like, well, I'm not going to go to sleep.
Right.
And have to get up in, like, 3 hours and go to the airport. I'll just pack on my shit and go now.
That's what I do. Yeah, I'll go like a day early. I don't care. Because planes are always trying to leave without me. I gotta keep a sharp eye on them.
Yeah. And, like, yeah, I've never had any problem, like, again, like, the gate may not be open.
Right, yeah.
Because, like, they usually don't open until...
Well, of course, you've never had any problems. You're a normal guy.
Again, I've never really had any major problems.
It's just me. So I escaped Thailand, not the time they tried to fly away without me.
But also... You've probably been on a lot more flights.
I have. Statistically, things are bound to go wrong.
I've been on maybe 20...
I was about to say,
25 flights.
I flew 30-something times in 1 year.
Yeah.
And I'm not a businessman. I'm just a guy who goes places.
Yeah.
But,
so statistically...
Yeah, it's bound to go wrong. But I feel like it goes wrong more, like a higher percentage for me, and it goes a higher magnitude for me. Like, yeah. I'm an extreme outlier, I hope. But when I escaped when I escaped Thailand... the time where they were trying to throw me in their brig and make me pay all that money, and I talked my way out of it, I escaped to Japan, which turned out to have just had a horrific tsunami nuclear meltdown combination.
The whole Fukushima.
Yes, the Fukushima Daiichi plant. Yeah. They just had
still having problems with
earthquake, tsunami. It was a devastating earthquake that caused a devastating tsunami that caused a devastating nuclear meltdown. And I was the only person flying into Tokyo from Thailand. And they detained me so fast. Bearing in mind I had all my credentials, like I still was officially within my Japanese college student term. Like I was still within all that.
Yeah.
And still they were like, they detained me because they were convinced I was smuggling drugs from Thailand. And I got to spend all day in their detainment room getting questioned and searched. And it was the same question.
Well, from what I hear, usually most of the drugs get smuggled in from China.
Well,
at least meth.
The meth gets smuggled from China. The heroin gets smuggled from Thailand.
Okay.
All the heroin gets smuggled from Thailand. The opioids. Heroin and opioids. But they put me in this room. And they're like, "Where are you coming from?" And of course, they already knew. But I was like, "Thailand," and I was the only person. Like, "Why are you here?" Like, "Well, actually, I kind of live here." Like, you just look at my passport.
Like, yeah, you try. I have a student visa.
Yeah, I'm here a lot. If you just flip through, I'm here like a whole lot. And they're like, "Yeah, you're also gone a lot. You're in and out a lot."
Oh, so you're resupplying, huh?
Yeah. This is like the very suspicious pattern you got here. Like, yeah, I guess. Basically, what it amounted to is they just were trying to deter all visitors. They just weren't having it. They were on high alert because their country was becoming unwound. Their country was
literally having a meltdown.
Yeah, their country was literally having a meltdown. But they spent a whole day rifling through my things and asking me if I had any weed. And which is weird because, I mean, weed is illegal in Japan, but, like, heroin is what you smuggle from Thailand. And that's what they were initially concerned that I had. But then they were just kept rifling through my stuff, and they're like, do you have any weed? And I was like, no. They're like, well, do you have any marijuana? Like, no, I don't. I do not have that. And they're like, do you have any pot?
Ganja?
Yeah. They're like, do you have any pot? I was like, I was like, I don't have.
Bud?
Yeah, and then with just a new question every time. Yeah, do you have any bud? Do you have any marijuana? Do you have any reefer? Do you have any?
Mary Jane?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't. This is all the same thing.
Icky?
Yeah, this is all. No, I don't have any. And then they pulled out a book, like a binder, with printed out laminated pictures, and they opened it up, and it was just weed.
Nothing,
they were like,
nothing looks like this?
They're like, do you have any of this? And they pointed to it, and I was like, I don't have that.
I understand fully what you're asking me.
Turn the page. Another picture of weed, but it's like, instead of the plant, it's like a joint. I'm like,
Yeah.
do you have this? I'm like, no. And they're like, turn the page again. It's like a pot brownie, but like with a weed leaf on it. And they're just like, what about, you got this? I'm like, I don't have any marijuana.
Look, if you want to check my asshole.
Yeah, just get to the point. And then they're rifling around all my stuff, and they're like, aha, what is this? I'm like, oh, that's a bottle of vitamin C. And they're like, what do you use it for? I'm like, well, it's
A healthy immune system.
yeah, I was like, it's naturally occurring in citrus fruits, but you use it coupled with vitamin D and other things to build a healthy, a well-rounded immune system, coupled with sunlight, melanin, melatonin or whatever, and you take it when you're traveling. If you can't get enough fruit, it's a vitamin. They're like, well, it looks like drugs. You can't have it. And I was like, that's fair. It's fine. It's like $3. Who cares?
That's fine. I can go to
whatever
a supplement store and buy another bottle for
there's plenty of edible fruit in Japan. Not an issue. I was just coming from Thailand. Some of it's not the greatest. Yeah, take the vitamin C. I don't care. And it's just like, well, what is this? I'm like, that's a poncho. Like, well, what do you use it for? I'm like, it's like, it's raining outside and you're gonna get wet, but you don't want to be wet. So you put that on, so you feel like a bag of garbage.
Yeah.
And they were just
It
like,
keeps your clothes dry.
yeah. Well, you could be miserable and wish that you were just wet.
Yeah, and now
And,
you're just really
Now you're
just really sweaty.
You're just super sweaty, and you wish it was rainwater. And they're like, okay, they're just going through all my stuff. Like, what is this? I'm like, yep, that's a sock. Yeah. put your penis in that when it's cold at night. Like, these are all normal things. So after a full day of that, they finally let me go because they realized I didn't have anything, and I lived there, and I was.
I think they
whatever.
Were just they were trying to make you crack.
What I think is they had a quota to meet of detaining people for questioning because of the recent circumstances of their country, and I was literally 100% of the people coming into the country at that moment. So they needed an X percentage, and I was the percentage. I was everything.
You were the only potential candidate.
I was the only candidate. So, I mean, it really felt like they just had a quota. Like, their heart wasn't in it. They knew. They were just going through the motions. Because it was just a pair of them, and as far as I know, it was probably like one of them was in training and needed to see how to interrogate somebody. But yeah, so that was then.
The part where they brought out the laminated pictures.
Yeah, I was just like, it's like all the same shit. Like, I still don't have any. You asked me in all the English words. I didn't tell them I spoke Japanese either, and they didn't ask, so I didn't like. So I was like, oh no, you're gonna work for this. You're gonna work for this in English. I am not giving you one leg up here. If you want to detain me, you're gonna get to practice.
I'm gonna make
English.
this hard on everybody.
Yeah, everyone is gonna get to suffer just like me. But yeah, so that was that time. What else? Let's see. Red List in China. Escape Thailand. Detained in Japan. One time I was trying to leave Canada, and this actually was the catalyst for a long-standing, I'm gonna call it a war, or like a feud, but not like a family feud. This was more like Hatfield and McCoy's kind of feud between myself and the airline known as Air Canada. I had the longest blood feud with Air Canada, and now we're on an uneasy truce. Like a very thin ice Israel-Palestine kind
We
of...
aren't openly at war.
Yeah, it's not
Secretly
even...
we are. But...
Yeah, it's not even an official ceasefire. We're just staring... It's more like a Mexican standoff. We're waiting for the other one to make the first move, but there for a while it was an official battle. And what started it was this. And bear in mind, you know what? I got another story too after this one. Remind me about Portland when I finish this story. I'm trying to leave Canada. I had just come from Japan. This was a different years. This was a number of years ago. I was coming from Japan, flying into Canada because I spend time in Canada because it's close to Alaska. But then I was flying from Canada to the States, and I had a bunch of shit with me. Here's a comical side note. So I was leaving Japan one time, and I had years worth of crap stored in my buddy's apartment that became... It was his apartment, but it became our apartment when I was in town because he was nice and I didn't want to pay for my own apartment. My own place. Yeah, places are expensive in Japan, and if I'm only going to be there for 3 or 6 months, we would bunk up together. And by the time that he was absolutely, tired of me, it was time for me to go, and we would part on good terms. So it was a perfect arrangement. But I kept accumulating stuff in the country, including 2 different Mount Fuji sticks, which I never did tell the second Mount Fuji story yet. 2 different Fuji sticks, just various things, a lot of junk. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get this all out of here. I'm gonna drop this stuff off in the States. And my buddy's like, how are you gonna get this shit out of here? This is so much stuff. What are you gonna do? I'm like, well, I got a plan, you see, because I am allowed 1 free checked bag. So I am just going to put all this stuff together.
As much as possible.
So what I did was...
One giant bag.
I got 1 giant bag, put everything in there. Then I got another giant bag, put the rest of the stuff in that. Then I got a parachute type thing, and I wrapped both of those up.
And then compress it down into that.
And I'm telling you, this thing weighed, I want to say hundreds of pounds, 200 pounds. And it was about the same height as I am, about 178 centimeters or 5'9", couple hundred pounds. It was an entire human being's worth of stuff, but it was twice as wide as me. And then I had the Fuji sticks sticking out of either side, laced across my back, and I hoisted this thing onto my back, and it looked like I had a giant turtle shell with 2 flagpoles sticking out of the side. And I was ready to go to the airport with my 1 bag. My 1 free bag.
So you're the reason why now we have to make our bags fit into this little square.
So I get to the airport and I'm like, ah! Just each step is so much effort. And I get to the conveyor belt to where the checked bag goes, and I'm like, ah! And I offload it onto the belt, and it's boom, and it just doesn't move. The belt stops because the bag is too heavy and too big. And the airline guy is like, what is this? And I was like...
my bag.
Yeah, also, I forgot to mention, when I wrapped the parachute thing around the outside and had the 2 Fuji sticks as giant flagpoles, I duct taped the whole thing together so that it was one solid unit. So there's just clearly duct tape, wrapped all around the outside from every angle. The guy's like, what is this? And I was like, that's my 1 checked bag, my 1 free checked bag for international travel. He was like, this is clearly a bunch of bags taped together with other shit hanging off. And I was like, sir, you're mistaken. This is obviously, I carried it
in all as 1 unit.
I carried it in as 1 unit. Please don't judge what my bag looks like. They're not all designer bags. But as you'll note, it's all one thing. It's my
one cohesive piece.
It's my 1 checked bag. And he was like, no. There's no way. He was like, we have a weight limit of 60 pounds per bag. This bag's 200 pounds. It's just logistically, there's no way. And I was like, well, what are we going to do about this? Because this is my 1 free checked bag. And he was like, I'll tell you what, I see what you're trying to do here. And this is the Japan side, right? So everything's going smooth. Super nice and accommodating. Let me interrupt this story for a quick anecdote. One time I was flying out of Japan, and I had just done a 20-man fight, and I had my knee dislocated. I was walking real slow. I was actually late for my flight by 10 minutes. They delayed the entire flight of 300 people and sent 2 people out to look for me and found me and then escorted me to the plane and helped me carry some stuff and then got me onto the plane and then flew away. All the other passengers were shitty because they were like, hey, BT Dubs, this is the guy we delayed your departure for. but he's here now, so we can leave. Like, Japanese customer service is on another level. It's how all customer service should be, I feel, to a point. But anyway, so that's just an anecdote. A thing that happened really illustrates the one or two good things that ever happened to me flying. The rest of it is just garbage fires and Satan rapings. But, so back to this guy. He's like, all right, I see what you're trying to do here. You don't want to pay for checked bags. I get it. Here's what we can do. If you can turn this into 3 bags of 60 pounds or whatever, we're good. And I was like, all right, you got it. So, like, I took off all the duct tape and I divvied up everything. I wrapped the parachute thing as one bag and used the 2 separate bags in another bag and got everything situated. And I got it. It was fine. Got them all through. No charge to me. Groovy. So now, Canada. I'm in Canada now. I'm trying to leave Canada. I still have all this shit. This is the same trip I'm on. I've been hauling it all around the whole time. Now I'm flying out of Canada. Go to leave Canada, right? And, like, hey, supposed to have a couple of bags here, or maybe one giant bag.
Never come up from the carousel?
And they never came up from the carousel. So...
And they're like, oh, yeah, you owe some money.
So I go... go to the customer service desk of Air Canada. And there's just the most condescendingly nonchalant, don't give a shit about anything guys. And
so first thing, like, well, are you sure it didn't come out?
Yeah, I'm sure I don't have any items. I'm sure all my belongings are gone, sir. And they're like, well, is it, could someone have mistaken it as theirs? Like, there's no possible way. These duct-taped monstrosities.
Believe me, these were very distinctive bags.
Yeah, there's no possible way. And he's like, well, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I guess we just don't have them. So... Then I went to the Air Canada, make a huge scene desk. And the line was astronomical, because everyone needs to make a huge scene. And I found out what had happened was, everybody on the flight, none of their luggage had showed up.
Oh, they just didn't transfer
it was
any of the luggage?
all gone.
Nice.
So I was like, hey, I'm actually supposed to be leaving, but I don't have any of my things. Could I find out where they are, please? And the lady, when I finally got to her and I found out what was going on, she's like, oh yeah, actually, I think if you want to wait, we might have them. And I was like, okay, well, my flight's in like an hour. I'm gonna need... By the way, this is all documented in real time. I was writing this in real time on my blog. So if you want to read the in-depth details, you can go to Nash-Style.com, Nash-Style.com. This is the gist, though. So she's like, yeah, if you want to wait around. I'm like, all right, but my flight's coming up, so I got to get this taken care of. She's like, yeah, no problem. So she directs me back to laissez-faire desk, and I get there, and they're closed. There's a little note that's like, back in 15 minutes. I'm like, oh, you... Well played. They just pointed me to a different desk that was closed, and now I gotta get back into this long-ass line if I want to talk to him again. But I just waited, and eventually someone did show up. And they were like, oh yeah, I think we got some bags that they're around. And I was like, what do you, where are they stored? And basically they were like, yeah, they're just all over the airport, just around. And I was like,
an Easter egg hunt.
And I was like, okay. What do you, in disbelief, clearly what I'm imagining cannot possibly be what you're describing. There's just a breakdown in communication here. But there wasn't! It was just an Easter egg hunt with bits of my shit and other people's shit all over the airport. Someone was in one of those golf cart things, just dropping off bits of people's stuff everywhere.
The hell?
So I had to go, and I'm just getting angrier and angrier with Air Canada. And
I'm just trying to think, what is the
rationale? It's just madness. I think they were just angry at working for an airline, and they wanted to make everyone else angry. There's no rational explanation other than that. So I finally hunt all my stuff down and put it back together as the Megatron, Transformer, GoBot, Voltron monster that it is.
Megazord.
Yeah, the Lego, Megazord Lego kit that it is. I put it all together, and I missed my flight. because I was hunting down my luggage, and I was shitty. Oh, no, I didn't miss my flight. What happened was I was hunting it down, and they canceled my flight. They canceled it.
Okay.
Which is relevant, because had I missed it of my own accord, it would have been my fault.
Right.
But they canceled it. So I finally found all my shit, and I was feeling especially combative. So I went to the want to go make a scene desk, where there was a huge line, because there was a huge line of people whose flight has been canceled, but they didn't post that it had been canceled. They didn't tell anybody. They didn't put it up on the monitor. They didn't make an announcement. Everyone's just waiting at the gate.
The plane just never arrived.
Yeah, everyone's just waiting at the gate, and they're like, wow, this plane's 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, 2 hours late. I don't think we're getting out of here. So we go to yell at this lady, and she's like, oh, yeah, it's canceled. Like, oh, really? Maybe telling your customers that the thing that they bought...
How long ago did you know that?
Yeah, maybe...
Oh, like 2 hours. Oh, really?
Yeah, really, that would have been neat for me to know as I was hunting down my items that are priceless and irreplaceable, that you just casually strewn about. If this was in any other airport, this was in Toronto International, if this was in any other airport, they would have had the bomb squad in there, because there's just loose backpacks and shit all over the place.
Say, there's just random luggage strewn about the airport.
So I'm livid at this point. I'm like, hey, you know what? When am I getting out of here? You canceled my flight. When is my flight now? And they're like, oh, you don't have one. Like, it's canceled. There just isn't one. Like, okay, well, make me have one, because I bought a ticket to get out of here.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, the next flight's tomorrow. And then they just looked at me, and I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do until then? And they're like, I don't know.
I don't
like,
care.
Yeah, who cares? Like, it's whatever. It's tomorrow. I'm like, no, it's not whatever. I want a hotel, and I want some money for food. And they were like, just go buy a hotel and get some food. And I was like, I don't have any money. And they were like, well, use your credit card. I was like, I don't have a credit card. And they were like, I don't know, call someone from your phone. I was like, I don't own a phone. I don't have any of this shit. Like, my wallet had like $1.50 Canadian, like 75 American cents, and like, whatever, like 1,000 yen. And I was just like, I don't have any of the currencies and any of the quantities necessary for me to be here right now. I don't have a credit card. I don't have a phone. I'm supposed to be on this flight. Get me a flight and a hotel room and some food and ideally some money. So I was getting pretty irritable. And the lady was like, okay, well, I'll tell you what. Everyone's getting, whose flight got canceled is tomorrow. Everyone's getting hotel vouchers. So I'm going to give you these hotel vouchers. When you get to the hotel, there is like a buffet there. And you could just give them these vouchers for that, and then you get fed. And I was like,
he's like, I don't know about Canada, but I know in the U.S., like, there is a dollar amount that they have to...
That equates to basic survival.
But they pretty much always give it in vouchers.
Right, yeah, it's vouchers. So it was for this one hotel.
Cash.
And you had to take a long-ass bus to get to this hotel. And it was me, and as I was hunting for my stuff, I found a somewhat elderly gentleman who was also hunting for his stuff. So he wound up getting a cart to put his
like a hand truck kind of
like
thing.
a hand truck to put his luggage in. And I refused because it cost $1. And I was like, on principle, I'm not paying for shit because this is their fault. And the guy was like, well, I hear you, but I'm old and I can't physically.
And I need it.
Yeah, he's like, I need it to lean on while I'm walking around, and I definitely need it to like push all my shit around. And I was like, hey, I don't begrudge you your cart. I'll help you look for your stuff. So I helped him look for his stuff, and I found his stuff, and I put it on his cart. And he's like, you know what, as thanks, you can put your stuff on my cart, so you don't have to walk around with like 200 pounds of turtle shell on your back. And I was like, well, you know what, as thanks for that, I will push your cart for you. And, if you needed to lean on it or whatever, you can lean on it. But, like, I'll push it for you so you don't have to worry about that. And he's like, thanks. So we kind of formed a pair. So when I went up to go yell at him, not the old guy, the service people, and they gave me the vouchers. The old guy was supposed to be on the same flight, so he got the vouchers too. So we took the bus together, and we get to the hotel, and we get to the check-in desk, and we present them with the vouchers, and the hotel people are like, what are these? And I was like, these are the vouchers from Air Canada. Here's our situation. And the guy was like, oh, these aren't good here.
That's what I was going to say, that they took you to, like, the wrong hotel.
They didn't take us to the wrong hotel. They took us to the right hotel. The guy was like, I wish Air Canada would quit sending people here. We don't have a deal with them.
Wow.
This is just a hotel.
This is how they get rid of you.
Yes. So they just pushed us off. And so the old guy was like, man, I was so furious. It was like a 40-minute bus ride to this hotel.
Yeah.
I was furious. And I was like, okay, well, can we get anything? He was like, it's that, I understand your situation. I'm going to go ahead. I can honor these, but I'm not supposed to honor them. And so the old guy was like, oh, okay, that's really good news, because I'm just old and tired. Like, this has been going on for too long. It's been a whole day's worth of this nonsense. I just want this to be over. And I was like, you know what? I'm furious, and I'm hungry. Just show me to your buffet. And the guy was like, we don't have a buffet. Like, we don't even have a restaurant. These food vouchers are worth nothing here, because we don't have any food.
Yeah.
And I was so furious. I was like, I'm taking a 40-minute bus ride back to the airport, and I'm going to fight Air Canada. And the old man was just like, I'm just too tired. Like, I just want a shower and to go to bed. He's like, you can come up into my room and use the shower and, like, stay if you want, because I know, they're not going to honor the stuff that you were given, but, like, I'm just going to pay for a room if they don't honor this, and you can use it if you want, because you've been, really nice. I was like, hey, I really appreciate that, but I am really in the mood for a fight. And they have got a fight coming to them. And I'm going to give it to them. So I just sat hungry and seething on this bus ride back to the airport.
Are you still lugging all your stuff with you?
Still lugging all my shit around. And I get back to the customer service desk like as they're trying to close. Because it's nighttime now. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. You're going to open this shit.
You shit everything on the floor and you're like, no.
Yeah. I just dropped it. I was like, I defy anyone to try to pick this up. It was like fucking Thor's hammer. It's like, boom! Like, no one's moving this. I'm just going to leave it wherever I feel like. And we're going to have a chit-chat, you and I, Air Canada. And I reamed their ass. And they're just like, well, what do you want? I was like, I want money for food! And a place to be!
Well, for starters, I want you to do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, I was just the worst type of person, and they deserved every second of it and so much more, because I didn't break anything, which is what I should have done. I was so furious.
Well, see, the thing is, if you did that, then it gives them, like, a complete... right to that.
Worth it.
Now we can just completely ignore you, and now we can just call the cops. And...
Worth it. I would love for them to get a whole platoon of polite Canadian officers to try to haul me out of there. It would take like 100 men, 100 polite men, or 20 impolite men to get me out of there. So they were like, well, look, we'll give you this voucher for food. And at
that point, I'd be like, no, fuck you.
Yeah, and they were
you
like,
give me cash.
They were like, here's some hotel vouchers, and I was just like, slap! Like, get that out of here! Your words are lies.
Like,
none of this means anything.
Just at the fucking hotel.
Yeah, I was like, none of this means anything, and they're like, okay, well, here's some non-Air Canada specific airport vouchers, and it was like $20 worth because by now it was like 10 or 11 at night, and it was just supposed to be enough to get me like a snack for the night and breakfast. To tide me over. And yeah, I wasn't going to starve to death because you can live for 3 weeks without food. But I'd already gone a full day without food and I was grumpy. I wanted some food. 20 airport dollars is like $1 real world dollar. Like, that food is too expensive. I got almost nothing.
Well, it's like even the McDonald's in the airport.
Yeah.
Like,
crazy expensive.
Just like a double cheeseburger is like $4 or $5.
Yeah, the inflation is ridiculous. I took their vouchers, I used them, and I just stayed up all night screaming about Air Canada. And then I finally did fly away. And that was the start of the war between Air Canada and I.
To never, ever fly them again.
There's a saga between Air Canada and I that goes on for a while.
So you've used them subsequently?
That I won't get into now, but it does go on. But I'm talking like a decade of bad blood.
Jeez.
This was the start of it.
But then it gets to a point, though, where it's kind of like, well, now it seems like you're just, like, masochistic.
Oh, no, I didn't use them anymore. I never used them again.
Okay.
Until, like, last year.
Okay.
Begrudgingly. It was begrudging.
I thought it was something like we were going to say, like, oh, no, I kept flying them, and just terrible things kept happening. Like, well, at some point, that becomes your fault.
No. I never flew them again until last year. But there were certain things where carriers I would be on would get rerouted through Air Canada's network, and it would still go to shit. And I would just...
Because, yeah, like, I know sometimes, like, if you're with a connecting flight or something,
right,
like,
yeah.
you don't have a choice.
Yeah, so there were instances where that would happen, and it would just be... I would make a scene at every turn because they had it coming. They had it coming.
I'm sure they had you on some list.
They need to. Yeah, just the saga. That was the start of that. One more final airline story because
So the last one he's talked about, to remind you, was Portland.
Portland. All right, final story. This one much shorter, less involved, more of an odyssey probably. But
this Portland, Oregon.
Yes.
Okay.
Does serve to illustrate that once again, everything I touch does kind of crumble down into shit and into some capacity. But I was in the Midwest, United States, and I was to fight in a martial arts tournament, a Kyokushin tournament, the bare knuckle kickboxing, no pads, no gloves, anything, Kyokushin karate tournament in Portland, Oregon. I was to fight in this. And it's decently grueling because it's like a no gloves, no pads, no nothing kickboxing match, except you have several opponents throughout the day, and they can go on many rounds, and it's known for being quite abusive, I guess. You gotta be decently tough.
I mean, I watched one of the ones on your blog, and I've seen a few, and yeah, it's
the one that's in my blog is actually from this story.
Okay.
Actually.
And yeah, it's pretty brutal.
I mean, it's a thing. It's an enjoyable pastime.
I mean, like, generally it doesn't look like the person's trying to kill you,
but they are.
But, like,
it's just everyone's got a good.
But they're
face
still
about
like they're still trying to stay within the confines of the rules.
Right, but the rules tend to favor. The goal is to either break the bones of your opponent or knock them out.
Yeah,
that's the goal. So I was like, well, you know what? I'm a scientifically minded individual, want to perform my best at this martial arts tournament. Portland, Oregon was like a mile above the current altitude that I had been training at, and that influences your ability to perform. So I was like, well, you know what I'm going to do? Since this tournament is on a Saturday morning, I'm going to get to Portland, Oregon like a Wednesday night. Like a Wednesday evening. Yeah, I want to acclimate to sort of the environment, the situation, get well rested, be familiar. Now I'll really, really perform, right? So my goal was to get there like Wednesday night. So I fly from Indianapolis, Indiana, which is where I was training at the time for this event. So I'd just flown from Japan, not too far before this, where I was training full-time, and then I was training adjunct in Indianapolis, Indiana. And then, so my flight was to take me from Indianapolis to Chicago, and then Chicago to Seattle, Washington, and then Seattle to Portland. So I get on the flight. I've got all my tournament gear with me, stuff to warm up with, like kicking pads and like different things I'm gonna need to like perform with, my dogi, my karate uniform and everything.
Your
like ready to go.
Yeah,
my accoutrement, my paraphernalia, my regalia, my accessories. So I've got all that, put it checked bag, no worries. It's checked. So everything's gonna be all right.
All I ever hear from anyone, not just you, but anyone, is you put stuff in check if you just never want to see it again.
Right. Because Air Canada's gonna fly in and take it all.
Or if you want to see it a week later.
Yeah. So, checked bag, no worries. Get on the flight. My transfer flight is in Chicago, so get off my plane, go to the gate to board my Chicago plane. I'm like, all right, now boarding Chicago flight, whatever, to Seattle. I'm like, oh, groovy. All right, let's do this. So, go to get on. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, the plane is full. I'm like, well, you're mistaken because I am not on it yet, you see, because I have a ticket with a seat number and everything.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, and they were like, oh, no, everyone's got a ticket, but
we sold more tickets than we have seats.
Yeah, they're like we're full up. We sold more tickets than we have seats, and I was like, what? And they're like, you just we're full. You can't get on the plane. And I was like, we don't understand. I have a place to be at a time, and I have a connecting flight. If I don't get on this flight, I'm not going to make my connecting flight in Seattle. Right. And they were like, well,
Oh, that is unfortunate.
That's, that sucks. Thanks for flying major airlines. And, so, despite what you might believe, I don't normally make a scene. It's just in all of these stories, there's been extreme circumstances. Yeah. I did, for about, I'm going to say maybe 10 seconds, make a pretty incredible scene. Like a really, probably over-the-top scene. But I just...
You're like, just drop your foot, like rip off your shirt, you're just like, no!
Pretty, almost! Like, just one step below that. Like, just... I was just incredulous. Like, I could not believe that this could be a thing. A person who purchased a ticket. I wasn't on standby. I bought a ticket with a seat number for a time on a plane.
No, the whole overbooking thing, I think...
I get it. Once again, I get it intellectually.
I understand why it happens, but at the same time, this is the only business model I think of that does this regularly on every single flight.
Yeah.
Where you have X number of seats, and you sell X plus 10%.
Yeah.
Tickets.
Because you just assume that not everyone's going to show up, and every now and again everyone shows up.
But then, and the thing is, like, I'm sure they have... I'm sure I'm sure they have their actuaries who have like crushed numbers and be like, yeah, statistically, on over 95% of flights, there's going to be like 3 or 4 people who just don't show up for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So statistically, we can oversell by 5, and it's never going to be a problem. But every time that it is a problem, it's always a huge problem for the person it's affecting.
It's a huge problem, and so I was like, no, I need to catch this connecting flight. I have this thing I need to get to. Also, my luggage is on this plane, and I'm not on this plane. And they were like, well, the luggage will get to, Seattle. You can go get it in Seattle. You're not going to Seattle.
Yeah, that's not where I'm stopping.
And they're like, well, you better get there, because that's where your luggage is going to be. Like, God, you're missing the point! And so they were like, we'll get you on the next flight, but you'll have to go standby. And I was like, But if the flight's full, like, I automatically am bumped to the back because I'm standby. I shouldn't be standby. I should be primary. Bump some other dick off this flight.
Right. I should have priority because you've already bumped me off the flight that I was supposed to be on.
Yeah, and they were like, no, the earliest we can get you there is on this other flight. It's just a huge mess. So the person I was traveling with, unfortunately for them, was a girl, buddy of mine at the time. And she was Googling on her phone, and she was like, oh, I found a flight. We could probably catch the luggage, but we have to take all these other ways to get there. And I'm like, fine, whatever. So what we did was, originally we flew from Indianapolis to Chicago, and then this plane left without us, not because we weren't there, but because middle fingers to us, to me, and my luggage took off for Seattle. So then we found a flight leaving from Indianapolis. So we took a mega bus from Chicago back to Indianapolis. It's now been 1 full day.
Yeah.
This is day 2 now. Get on the flight from Indianapolis and fly to Phoenix, Arizona, where we then switch flights to go to Seattle, Washington to get my luggage. Mm-hmm. It's now towards the end of day 2.
Yeah.
I have to get to the luggage holding bay before it closes for the night at like 11 p.m. We get there right on time, grab my stuff. It's now the beginning of day 3. Now we have to take a bus. I think there was another connecting flight in there sometime, but we eventually get to Seattle. Now we have to take a bus from Seattle, Washington to Portland, Oregon. So my plan originally was to get there Wednesday night and acclimate. The fighting tournament starts at 10 in the morning on Saturday. Mm-hmm. I get to my hotel room at 3 in the morning on Saturday. No food or sleep
and I was actually
for 3 days.
When I watched the video, like, you seem pretty exhausted.
Yes, before the fight even started, I was exhausted. No food or sleep for 3 days. And that was actually the finals. I somehow made it to the finals.
Yeah, like, I know I didn't see, like, the only one on there that I saw was
semifinals, whatever.
Yeah, it was like final or semifinal fights. So I knew that you had already had some other fights, but I'm like, man, Nash just looks really like drained.
Just ragged. 3 days of no food and no sleep. Then to go fight in that martial arts tournament. That's the story of my life. My whole life And my whole competing career is story after story of almost that exact same
Every
thing.
tournament you get to, you're just like on fumes.
Yes, every cage fight, every martial arts tournament, every back alley mahjong tournament is always the same stuff. And yeah, which is crazy because I still have enough juice to get to the semifinals, and all these people were like, "Wow, you looking at this guy Nash? He's gonna win the whole thing. Like this guy's a dynamo. He's the best. I cannot believe this guy." And then by the time the semifinals rolled around,
You just hit that wall. You're like, all right, now I'm basically just trying to like.
I hit all the walls.
I
hit all the walls, and everyone was like, "What happened?" And then I explained the situation, and they were like, "Oh, well that makes sense."
It was like, yeah, I haven't really slept in the last 3 days.
Yeah, or ate. No food or sleep in 3 days.
Also, I'm at like a much higher altitude than I'm used to.
Yeah, just everything.
Just got here.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, I got here like 2 hours ago with no food or sleep for 3 days, and I'm at a much higher altitude, and I've also been really stressed out because I've been swearing at airlines.
Chasing my luggage across the country.
Chasing my luggage across the country. Just the whole thing. And actually did make I made a lot of good chums during that martial arts tournament. Made a good impression with people who mattered. Within the close-knit group of martial arts people. I was invited to LA to train with a pretty exclusive martial arts master named what is his name? Kenji Yamaki. He's the head of Yamaki Karate. And his disciple invited me out there. He was like, "Oh yeah, you're really good. Like I thought you were gonna win the whole thing. You should come out and train with my teacher." I didn't know who his teacher was. His teacher is this hugely respected guy, Kenji Yamaki, who formed his own style, Yamaki Karate. And when I showed my best Japanese buddy, who for a long time was the world middleweight Kyokushin champion, he was like, "Oh, I'm so jealous. You get to train with this guy?" Like every time I wander somewhere, I'm like, "Hey, check who I was training with." He's like, "Oh no way." Like, yeah, you may be the world middleweight champion, but yeah, I get around.
To train with Kenji.
I get around too. But yeah, so I actually went out to LA to train with him, and I stayed with the man while I was out there, so that was pretty nice. And he was chauffeuring me around while I was training, which was because he's a nice guy. He's an overly nice guy.
That would be, I think, a pretty apt description of him.
Yeah, he's super nice. He's
one of the nicest people I've had the pleasure of meeting.
He is. He's just a very, I don't know. He's a bright spot in a sometimes dark world. So it's nice. It's nice that he exists. Like I'm glad. The world's better off if you had the option of more or less of that type of person.
You definitely want more.
You definitely want more for sure. But yeah, so that's just one example.
It's kind of weird. Like the people who are like. I've had friends who like you haven't been around him a lot.
Right.
Like I lived with him for a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I had friends like maybe their first time meeting him, and they think that like he's like being almost like sarcastic or something.
Right, because you're not used to someone.
Right. I'm like, no, that's how he actually is. He's genuine. Like
yeah, he's quite genuine.
He's not like messing around with you or something. Like
people make that mistake with me, but for a different reason. Because the tone of my voice, everything I say sounds sarcastic. But that's just the sound of my voice.
That's just how I always sound.
Like, lots of times I'll be like, "Hey, man, nice shirt." But I really mean that's a nice shirt. But people are just like, "Hey, nice shirt." And they're like, "Fuck you, you dick." Like, my mom gave me this shirt, and then she died. And
they're like, "No, I like this shirt."
It's a very nice shirt.
And you're just like, "Yeah, so do I."
Yeah, it's so nice. Like, I really mean that it is, though. I'm sorry. I sound like a sarcastic person. That's the tone of my voice. Oftentimes, I'm genuine.
I think there was a whole SNL skit about that.
Probably. Oftentimes, I am sarcastic, though, but I always preface when I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
I always pre or post note my sarcasm so that everyone's aware.
Yeah, just hey, and then tell it.
I'm like, "Hey, nice pants." By the way, sarcasm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just a taste, although not even a taste, a chunk, large chunk. Those are the most significant airline disasters. Oh no, wait, one more. I know we're at like a minute, an hour 40. This one's quick.
All right.
And then I'll wrap it. I just have so many. God, I hate the airlines. Oh, we didn't even get to the PSA or anything. Jesus. All right, one more quick thing. All right, so one time I was flying from Vegas one time. And there was a huge storm that was blowing in. Mm-hmm. And all the airlines were like, "You know what? this storm is too serious. We should not be flying through this storm. We are stopping our routes for the night until this thing blows over. It's not worth it. It's clearly too dangerous. All the airlines. Not my airline, though. It was like, we got this. Ride the lightning! So...
I think that's what happened one time with the flight I took back from New York to Indianapolis. That was, like I said, I've flown a fair number of planes. This was definitely the worst turbulence I've ever experienced. And I've been on, like I said, I've been on a fair number of planes. Like, I'm used to like normal turbulence or flying through a storm.
Right.
I was flying with my friend Rob, who he already doesn't like flying.
I hate flying.
That he gets like anxiety with it, and
I hate the whole thing.
He's had like panic attacks and stuff. So like, he already just really does not like flying. So he's on this flight, and he's just kind of like basically trying to keep himself together.
Right.
And like, getting to the point where normally I've flown with him before. I'm just kind of like, I know that's just how he has to deal with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is where I'm kind of like, actually, this is kind of concerning.
I don't want to freak you out by me freaking out, but if one of us was to freak out, we'd kind of be justified.
So basically, I'm trying to keep calm too because I want to freak him out more than he's already freaked out.
Yeah.
But I'm still inside kind of like, this is kind of bad. This is
getting kind of rough, even for me, who doesn't really mind it. Yeah, just flying is a whole nightmare. From just being up in the sky, you're nothing. It's just a bunch of rude people and a pressurized tube rocketing through the sky, breathing nothing but recycled farts for hours on end. It's a nightmare, and I hate it. And then getting through the airport is rough too, because the TSA are a bunch of goons. Yeah. They steal stuff all the time, and
they don't stop anything.
They don't stop anything. And now they've gotten just real handsy, and now they've got the like biometric scanner, where you go in and they just show everything about you, like you're freaking
cylinder
Captain America. I just tell them no.
Yeah, you can opt out of it.
You can opt out of it, but they have to give you like a thorough search.
Yeah,
and I'm on the special extra thorough. I'm on the quote randomly selected screening unquote list. It's not random at all. I'm on that. I show up hours in advance because I am hoping for the shit show that they'll give me. Like, I'm just like, oh, you want a private room? I'm like, no, we're doing this in person. Let's go nuts. But thankfully, one time there was a guy and a lady who were patting me down, and I'm glad one of my buddies was around.
You get a 2-person pat down?
Oh yeah. They go in teams, man.
Double teaming you?
They do, yeah. They're just gangbanging me, the TSA. But one lady was like, "What is this?" Like feeling my thigh, and I was like, "That's my thigh." And she was like, "No, but I mean, like, what's in here?" And I was like, "That's
my leg.
That's just my leg." She was like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "Yeah, I know, right? Pretty nice." So that was nice.
I don't know if you seen the video where like it's basically a cop giving.
Is it the guy with the huge dick?
Yeah, she's like grabbing his penis.
Yeah.
And he's like one side he's like, "That's my penis." And the other guy's just like, "Oh."
Yeah. Like, aha, take that. Yeah. So that was this lady. She was like feeling my leg, and she was like, "What is this?" Like that's my body. It's mostly made of rocks, I think. But that's me. She was like, "Oh, what?" Like, yeah, you're welcome. You are welcome, lady. So that was pretty cool.
Glad I could brighten your day.
That's right. But quick side. All right, 2 more anecdotes because I didn't finish the first one, and then I got another one of how I actually got originally on the additional screening list.
Okay.
I was 17 years old at the time. I made all the bad decisions, like I'm prone to do. But anyway, so all the planes were grounded, and they were like, "Hey, we're not flying, not through this." And my plane was like, "Yeah, we got this." So it was one of those situations where
he's like, "We can make it if we leave right now."
Yeah, so it's one of those situations where the plane goes up, comes down in a different city. Everyone's got to change planes, but you don't actually change planes. You get back on the same plane. You just have to get out.
And they taxi to like another gate.
They didn't even taxi to another gate.
Oh, wow.
Like, you just get out, and then everyone else gets back on. They just have to, like, flip it for oncoming people.
Because I've had flights like that where they didn't make us get out if we...
Right.
Like, we'd show, like, no, like, I'm on this flight.
Yeah, we had to get out because they had to clean it for the new people or whatever. But it was the same plane and everything. So we fly. There's an insane amount of turbulence. This is one of those storms where you're like, is this okay? Like, green lightning and snow? Like, one of those? Yeah. Like, lots of snow.
And you get those, like, sudden, like... I don't know. I'm guessing like 200-300 foot drops.
Yes. Yeah. Where where all of a sudden there's no more air to fly through. Like, you're just flying and you're like, whoops, and then the plane falls down. Just green lightning. Way too much snow to be comfortable. Like, shouldn't we be above the snow? Like, I'm no pilot. I'm not an air scientist, but I feel like we shouldn't be in the green lightning snow zone where we're getting the shit beat out of us. And it was shaky, like real concerningly shaky. To the point where I was like, you know what, I was bothered before, but now I'm very, like, are we going to land in one piece?
Now so before I was, like, annoyed. Now I'm concerned.
Yeah, are we all going to land in the same spot? Or are we going to land in, like, different airports? Like, if you get what I'm saying.
We're going to land scattered over a 30-mile radius.
Right. So we did wind up landing, and it was a real rough landing. And then we got out of the plane, and then they went to go clean it. And we went to go get back on the plane, and they're like, oh, actually, you can't get back on this plane. And I was like, well, I need to be on that plane. Is this another freaking Chicago situation where there's too many people on the plane? But there wasn't anyone on the plane. And they were like, no, actually, and I don't remember what they're called, but you know on the wings they have those flaps that move up and down that help brace you and catch the wind so that you slow down?
Yeah.
One of those blew off when we landed.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, and they were like, hey, just this plane is no good anymore.
Yeah,
because one of those things...
The plane's not flying until we repair it.
Yeah, one of those flaps blew off. Like, this is like 10% of the wing flew off. Like, if that had happened earlier, you know, I don't know, would we have been hosed? Maybe.
You technically don't need flaps.
Yeah.
To fly a plane. They help.
Right. Yeah.
Technically, they are integral to keeping the plane.
Yeah, I mean, we probably could have landed
up in the air.
Yeah, in a normal situation, we probably could have landed minus a flap. But I mean, there was a lot of lightning and.
Yeah, that's the main thing is they increase drag, so they help like slow down the plane.
Yeah. So I mean, that was disconcerting. That bothered me a lot. And then, I don't know. Yeah, I guess this is gonna be a long episode of me talking about plane problems because I got one final anecdote. The first time I put myself on the randomly selected screening list. It's not random at all. I was flying to Alaska, 17 years old, gonna go be a king crab fisherman, and there is, or was at the time, this was post 9/11, post September 11th United States attacks. Alaska is still technically part of the United States, even though the lower 48 disagrees and Alaska disagrees. Everyone disagrees. The only reason the lower 48 even pretends that it's part of the U.S. is because there's a lot of oil there.
Yep.
But kind of like everywhere else. But anyway, so I'm flying there, and there's at the time there was 4 things you could do that would get 4 S's put on your ticket. That was the code for, quote, randomly selected for security screenings. And I did all of those things at once. So any one of these things gets you on the list.
So you were the
super
special 100% random, always selected.
So the things are, 1, you buy your ticket less than 24 hours before you plan to leave. So you buy it the day you're planning to leave.
Yeah.
2, it's a one-way ticket. 3, you have no checked bags and only a carry-on bag. And 4, you pay in cash.
Yeah.
So I just...
Which again, all those things make sense.
Right, yeah. So I just showed up at the airport.
Doing all of them at the same time? Yeah. That would raise some concern.
Yeah, I showed up at the airport, 17 years old, no checked bags. All I had was my World War II Navy bag that I was carrying around. And I was just like, one-way ticket to Alaska, please! Big roll of cash right on the table. No checked bags or anything. And they were like, oh... You've been randomly selected for additional screenings. Like, so many times over. And ever since then, every time, I've never escaped.
It's a friend of a friend's boyfriend who is, I don't know his actual ethnicity, but he's brown.
Right, yeah, that'll do it! And I used to have a military haircut. Now that I've got dreadlocks... And I do all the other stuff that I do. Like, there's no escape. It's me and the Browns.
Yeah.
It's just, we're randomly selected every time.
Randomly selected 6 out of 6 flights.
Yeah. I am randomly selected 100% of the time. It's like me, brown people, and then, I don't know, like, if there's a fidgety black person, they'll get on there. And that's every single time. Yes, Ben, the sound guy?
Did you just, like... guess those things are like?
I was later told those. Like I found out
by the airport people.
Not them. Later, I read a book written about the change in airport regulations due to September 11th attacks.
Okay, so now there's that book. Well, for one, I feel like that doesn't even that's not even necessarily a terrorist kind of a thing. That could be a serial killer trying to, maybe they're evading the authorities. Maybe
just lots of red flags.
But that's not gonna TSA's for terrorists. They're not to catch serial killers, so that's a complete waste of their time.
Yeah.
But well, I mean, now that information is public, though,
I'm sure that
the terrorists
when they
would
run
know
that stuff, though,
that you buy a round trip ticket.
Yeah.
You buy it, a week in advance.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you just do all that stuff. So now you're I guess you're catching stupid people.
This was a long time ago. This was before.
Well,
this was
that information. If there's information out there
ago.
Like that,
that information may be out there now, but not so much back then.
Yeah, back then it wasn't out there. I mean, this was.
Well, and one thing I've always wondered is why
15 years ago.
Why are one-way flights so frequently more expensive than a round-trip flight?
There's a lot of analytics that go into that. I've actually got a book on it. It's got something to do with guaranteed fuel recoup costs because they're not guaranteed customers on either end of the leg, but they have to fly both legs. They have to go to and from, assuming that they're only going back and forth. I mean, obviously, most planes don't just go in a straight line. They go to many different areas, but they do fly a circuit, typically. But they're not guaranteed to have... They have to fly that, so they're guaranteed costs, but they're not guaranteed a return. So, if you buy a round-trip ticket, that means they have a guaranteed person on that flight paying for some fuel on part of that leg. So, if they can get everybody to do that, then they'll be able to make money. Whereas, if you're just going one way, they can't count on you to come back.
Right.
But they have to fly back anyway.
But shouldn't it,
that's my question. Is you say they have to fly back anyway, but they're going to fly back anyway is the thing.
Right.
Well, so that just
it's not like it's like, oh, we just never have any customers, so we're just gonna fly this empty plane back because we got to go back to home base.
No, they do. They do have to. Even if there's no customers on there, they have to fly back to maintain their schedule.
And I guess my question is how often does that happen?
It does happen. I'm
sure it probably does happen. Where it just happens that no one took a flight that day.
yeah. I mean, it does happen, and there's a lot of other factors that go into why a round trip ticket would be comparatively
just
cheaper.
It was because it's not it's $20 more. No, it's $150.
Yeah. Well, a round trip ticket's not cheaper. It's cheaper comparatively.
Right.
Than 2 one-way tickets.
Well, I mean, they're just recently. Because I was looking at my parents talking about taking a vacation down to Florida later, end of July, and I was looking at I may need to come back earlier than they're coming back.
Right.
So I was like, well, if I ride down with them, but then take a one-way flight back to Indianapolis, how much would that cost? Compared to me just driving down and driving back, because I know it's cheaper to drive. It's mostly I don't want to drive.
Yeah, I hate driving, but I hate flying even more.
But when I was looking at ticket prices, I was I didn't go super deep into it. I was looking just Expedia or something.
Yeah.
That it was going to be $100 more.
Yeah.
For a one-way ticket versus a round-trip ticket flying to Florida and back to Indianapolis. Which I was that doesn't make any damn sense.
they do it, man, because they can make up the difference, in other ways for people flying single.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a mathematical reason why it's not.
I'm
sure it's also just a little bit more that they're all. It's probably 80% mathematics and 20% they're just assholes.
Yeah,
trying to make money.
Yeah, it's it's 80% algorithms, and then 20%, which is greed.
Yeah.
just greed and stubbornness. There's a book called Power Travel. It's kind of dated. It's not too dated. I mean, it's 5 or 6 years old now. But it has a lot of fascinating. It's got. It shows you the analytics that they use for the pricing, like what algorithms they use to come up with the prices of various. Like which parts of the plane to sit in are most expensive, which parts of the plane.
Well, and like I know a big factor also is the fuel cost.
Yeah,
and that generally they're buying the fuel way in advance.
Yes.
So if fuel prices
it's kind of a speculative market.
Exactly. That they have to be almost in the oil business.
Yeah.
Speculating on how much price of oil is going to change because they're having to buy tons of it. And have in many cases like a month's supply,
right?
And
then they cross that with what's going on in the area. Tickets are going to be more expensive going to New Orleans for Mardi Gras time,
right?
Versus literally any other time, because no one wants to go there any other time unless they live there full time,
right?
In which case, if they have the means to fly out, they've probably flown out and left forever. Same thing with I don't know. What other, if there's a Super Bowl around or whatever. Yeah, I mean, they adjust their algorithms accordingly, but it's a very fascinating book.
Also, just times of year people take vacations.
Definitely worth a read. Yeah, it factors in things like school cycles, when people want to fly.
Same thing like when they go on winter break, when
colleges
go on winter break.
Yeah, I mean, it's all factored in. It's all extremely fascinating. All right, let's wrap this episode up because we're hitting 2 hours plus here. What do we got? All right, so flying sucks. I think we've established that empirically, objectively, analytically. No one dares object. Flying is the worst.
But at the same time,
it sounds like an objection.
There's not really a better alternative if you're trying to get somewhere quickly.
Isn't there, though? In the news today, Hyperloop. Are you familiar with Hyperloop?
There's not really a better alternative in existence.
It's getting ready to exist. Look, all right, you want a better alternative? Here's some better alternatives. Hitchhike, drive, take a boat, anything, underline, exclamation point. I'm talking, you want to get from A to B, do some cartwheels all the way there. Log rolls, lie on your side and just roll down the side.
I gave the stipulation of quickly. There's definitely better means of travel.
Quickly, all right, fair enough.
Absolutely better means of travel.
I mean, it's true, you only get so many breaths in this life. And you want to spend them all the best you can, and you want to mitigate any wasted time.
Basically, for some reason,
so you want to teleport from A to B.
I need to be in Baltimore
tomorrow
by 1 p.m. tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like my option is I can either leave and start driving right now,
or fly. I get that, but to the best of your ability, you should enjoy.
It's like a 4-hour flight.
Yeah, it's not so much the destination as the journey, they say,
Yeah,
for the most part.
No, absolutely.
So I would suggest that, if you hitchhike or drive or ride share or cartwheel or take a train or a bus, there is an element of adventure and getting to know new people and, new experiences in that. And you don't have to deal with the TSA. And you're still decently close to the ground. I mean, there's a magical beauty to flying, yes, but all the other bullshit has negated that. It's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. Quick thing, we gotta get out of here. Hyperloop, conceived by Elon Musk, head of Tesla. It's yes, claps for Elon Musk. It's a pod and a low pressure tube that could potentially exceed plane speeds. So think of like a train, but think of like a maglev train, so a magnetically levitated super train,
basically frictionless,
like the bullet train. Yeah, think of that, but in an enclosed tube, so it's like a subway,
nearly vacuum, so even
less friction, and then there's compressed air used to levitate the train along with the maglev system, and then you shoot off hundreds and hundreds of miles an hour. It was tested, it works, and Amsterdam and Paris have started work on connecting each other via Hyperloop. Yeah, that happened. That happened this week.
The idea has been around for a while.
Yeah.
I know Tesla was very much, wanting to implement it.
Yeah.
And was, working out the logistics of actually doing it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't aware that anywhere it actually started.
Yeah, it was conceived to be quiet, environmentally friendly, and autonomous. And Amsterdam and Paris are in talks to start construction on one that would connect the two cities via Hyperloop, and the Czech Republic and other countries are looking to follow suit. So all across Europe, you could be teleporting via Hyperloop, and in North America, you're still trying not to get your head cut off by Mexican pirates, and hoping that you don't have any of your things stolen by the gangsters that run the airlines.
Yeah. Speaking of Tesla, I was just talking to some friends earlier
This
today.
better be quick.
It is quick. Talking to some friends earlier today saying, man, I really wish I had, and this is specifically Tesla Motors.
Right.
I really wish I had invested money when I first heard about them. Because I'd heard about it and I was always interested in it. And
Right.
I just never... I don't normally buy individual stocks. I invest in index funds. But,
Do you?
Yeah.
You look like the type of person that would invest in index funds. And that's meant as a compliment, by the way. You look like an intelligent, sort of market-savvy person.
Yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm
do not invest.
rich by any means.
Sure,
but I try to
just
wisely
thought out,
invested.
Money.
Now, granted, I did something stupid and withdrew all my 401k money a few years ago.
It'll come back,
and just lived on it for a while.
You'll live a long and fruitful life. Who cares?
So I've been slowly building back up. But anyways, over the last 5 years, the stock value of Tesla Motors has increased 1,060%.
Well, I'm no statistician or market analyst, but
I believe that's what they call it. The technical term is a fuck ton.
Yeah,
for that.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's the scientific statistical term.
The friend I was talking to about this,
impossible windfall, improbable lottery.
That he actually applied for a job at Tesla Motors when he was needing a job, and he was just kind of going to different places. And he said that one of the neat things there is that when you start, they give you $10,000 in shares, and then it's a 4-year vesting period before you're 100% vested, but basically vest 25% each year.
Right.
So first year you'd have $2,500, then $5,000, so $500, then full $10,000. But he was saying the problem though is that what they actually paid for the base rate wasn't enough for him to live out there.
Oh, right.
Because he was living in Washington D.C. and he said they pay $17 an hour, and he's like, that would be pretty much enough I could afford rent, and that's it.
Yeah.
But he's like, yeah, if I could have worked there, even if I was only there for a year, that $2,500 vested would be worth, I would have made a net gain of about $2,000.
Yeah, not bad.
Which is just nuts. But yeah, now if I wanted to buy individual stock, and I couldn't even afford one share easily because it's $360 a share or something now.
Pricey.
Yeah.
Well, the whole world is on fire, so it could go either way.
That's why I'm just telling you too. I'm actually going to be moving a bunch of my money to bonds in the near future because the stock market's been it's been on a very big climb.
Yes.
For the last year or so, 8 months, and I feel that bubble's kind of going to start deflating.
Oh yeah, that whole thing's cruising for.
And I feel that it's probably I don't necessarily think it's going to be as bad as 2008, but I think probably comparable.
Well, that's fantastic because I've got all my money invested in artifacts and hookers and booze.
Yeah, so there you go. You have a very stable rate of return of
that's true.
0.
just kidding about the hookers. I don't even pay.
But
for
you never
food
lose
shelter.
money. You never lose
That's
money.
right. I never lose money. I mean, I lose money literally.
Yeah.
But I
but
don't.
not due to stock
market fluctuations.
Fluctuations.
Yeah. Market fluctuations have no effect on a poor person.
Yeah. Other than your money may now not buy as much as it used to. But yeah,
It's the beauty of being poor. I don't have any money, so it's fine.
2008, I basically, and I'm not someone who had a ton of money invested.
Right.
But I basically lost $3,000 overnight.
Yeah, I lost a few $1,000s because I was going to school in Japan and I had money that I was living off
so like
of.
your exchange rate
just disappeared. I was like, oh,
but,
oh my.
But like, yeah, I had people I worked with who, they've been investing in their 401k much, much longer. And, we're reaching like new retirement and they're like, I just lost like $200,000.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to work like another, like 6 years.
That's what happens when your worth is tied up in an idea. And like a non-corporeal entity.
Yeah.
That's why, my sandwich will always be a sandwich. It's not an idea.
That's true.
It's not an idea of deliciousness that scales with how hungry I am. It just is a sandwich. And I can eat it anytime. I don't need to...
And the way I kind of look at it is kind of like, I'm going to eat half my sandwich now, but save some for later.
Yeah.
Because I don't invest like a huge like amount of my money where it's just like, oh, that's what I do with all my money. I put it in the bank, and I don't do anything else with it. And then I just work, 18 hours a day.
Yeah, phooey on that noise. What were you saying about...
You're also not going to a man selling you sandwiches where he's selling from a buffet of sandwiches where a few of them are good and most of them are terrible, but he's saying on average these sandwiches are pretty okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Just pick one at random.
And I'm not just giving sandwich vendor my money and then getting the sandwich he recommends.
Yeah.
I buy. I'm not doing that.
Random around.
Yeah. Out of his smorgasbord of sandwiches, I am choosing. I make my own sandwich.
Yeah.
From the ether.
No, I will say I do. I while I do invest in index funds, like I do manually manage my stocks. Which it's nice the place where it allows you to do that without having to like pay extra.
Right.
So I do pick which funds I'm investing in, but then I also have money in individual stocks, and I obviously pick what things I want to invest in. And some things I pick because even though I don't think they may make money, I believe in the company. I think they're doing good things.
That's you and I are so fundamentally on opposite ends of the spectrum, and I really enjoy that because I don't disagree with any of the things you're saying.
Exactly. It's like same thing. It's like I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but I would never do what you do.
Yeah. Like I very much I'm glad you do all the things you do. We're just on opposite ends of the spectrum of existing within that medium. Because to invest in a thing means that you have an inherent amount of either faith or trust in that thing.
Absolutely.
You believe or hope that the market itself will continue to exist on a long enough time frame for you to continue to play that market, and then within that market that those entities continue to exist, be they currency or company.
Right.
And I just don't have any trust in any of those things at all.
As far as companies, that's a very healthy look at it.
Yeah.
Currency, while it absolutely is possible, that like
currencies
currency
these
as
days
thing could collapse.
Yeah, currencies these days don't come and go as fast as they used to. There was a few.
Yeah.
I mean, Bitcoin.
Bitcoin's still definitely around.
See, it's still around, but it didn't used to be around.
It's actually gone way up in value.
Yeah, see, it sprung up out of nowhere, and people initially investing in that were laughed at.
Certain countries, China specifically.
South Korea, I think, too.
Yeah, that it's becoming like more of like a mainstream currency, almost where like regular stores accept.
Right. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
But see, that's not. It's not like it was just some thing that was worth nothing, and like people you for investing in it. If it was just people like Aaron investing in it, and that's it, and they're just buying that shit.
But that's the thing.
Then it would be worth nothing. But
everything
it was an
initially.
anonymous online currency that you could purchase with real currency, which probably gained value through its exchange and usage by
that's how all things
market things.
That's how all things gain value.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people are saying, that it's gaining traction as basically as a means of laundering the black market money.
Yeah, exactly.
Most currency exchanges are at the end of the day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Which that's not something unique to Bitcoin. But one thing that I always find interesting is there's a thing I stumbled across that showed a visualization real time of all transactions happening in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And it would have a visualization of like basically a sphere.
Okay.
That would either increase or decrease in size based on the amount of the transaction.
Right.
So you would see
like a
bunch of tiny
pulsating sphere.
Well, basically it was like so picture you have like a table.
Okay.
And then just like a ball drops from the sky, bounces around on the table, eventually rolls off.
Okay.
But there's like, multiple stuff happening because there's a bunch of transactions going on.
Right.
Most of them are tiny.
But every now and then you get a
every
huge
now
one
and
that's
then-
definitely like someone buying a human being.
Yeah. It would be like, like $2 million or more. Like in Bitcoin.
Suspicious.
Boom! Big bowling ball just
Yeah.
drops on the table like, wow, that was like $3.8 million. That's weird.
That's a laundered boat. That's definitely a boat. There it is. Sound guy Ben bringing up the... or something similar.
That's not exactly
That's pretty impressive, whatever the hell I'm looking at.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of breaking out different types
Looks
of
like a
transactions and things.
molecule.
And showing basically like money traveling from like to specific wallets.
Very interesting.
But yeah, that's the other thing. If you're gonna launder money on Bitcoin, kids, what you need to do, don't just have one wallet. You need to have 5 or 6 wallets.
Right. Don't have
split up all your
one
funds
massive...
going to all of those.
Yeah, that's money laundering 101.
Yeah.
Don't put your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
You should probably also still have an online front of some kind, and not just transfer.
Oh yeah.
wallets.
Have
You still
some
need
kind
an
of
actual-
legitimate means of some kind of income.
Maybe you have an Amazon store where you sell various goods. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And you don't
I'm
really
not telling
sell
you.
those goods.
Yeah, I'm not telling you how to launder your money. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just telling you what not to do. That's all.
Yeah.
What you do is up to you. All right, let's wrap this up. Final notes. Got anything?
This rum is tasty.
It is, right?
It's not as good as that coconut milk rum you brought last time, but still very
Yeah,
good.
because this one's 100% rum, and that last one was rum plus coconut milk.
Yeah.
But still, as rums go, one of the finest, I would say.
Yeah.
As far as
Very,
pure rum.
Very tasty.
Yeah, as far as pure rum goes, very refined. I don't want to make any recommendations because they haven't paid me. But needless to say, there's a bottle of rum from a maker of note, shaped like a cannonball or a coconut. You'll know when you see it. It's pretty high quality.
Mm-hmm.
So if you work for that company and you'd like to sponsor this podcast, I myself have been to the founder, the namesakes. I've been to the namesake's homestead in his adopted country of origin, of governorship. And I have had many a good night with your product. So if you want to sponsor this podcast, I would gladly endorse your product.
So we give him your email address or means to contact
you. Yeah, you can find me at Nash-Style.com or the YouTube channel Nash-Style! ! Nash-Style! Panache! It's me. Where can they find you at?
They can't.
Can't they? Don't you have another show?
Yeah.
You do?
So we have another show that I'm doing with Ben, the sound guy, and another friend of ours, the Steaming Pile. Still kind of in pre-production right now, kind of like how this is. That we recorded stuff, but haven't actually released anything yet.
Yes.
But so Aaron at the Steaming Pile.
All right. Is that on? Is that going to be on YouTube or?
Yeah, so it's going to be on YouTube. We already got the domain name registered.
Excellent.
So thesteamingpile.com.
I look forward.
But if you try pulling it up right now, it's probably not going to pull up anything.
Yeah, it's probably not ready yet. But by the time this episode airs,
maybe.
Probably. We'll say yes. That's excellent. All right. Any final notes? I would say public service announcement for this episode. Travel broadens the mind. Mind once stretched by a new idea, never return to its original shape. That's always good. Just maybe don't fly. Just if you have to fly, just know that it's probably going to suck all the balls.
I've always wanted to take a long train ride, but I've never had the time.
On our next... Did I ever tell... I told you that story about taking the train from Chicago to Portland, Oregon, didn't I? Mm-hmm. And we wound up in Canada. And then we ditched some lady there. It was a long train ride.
Yeah.
I've taken a lot of long train rides in my life, but that was one of the longest. I've taken a lot of 48-hour train rides.
Yeah.
That one was 72. It's definitely encouraged. If you ever need someone to go with, hit me up. I'm always up for a long train ride.
So the thing is, I'm not sure how good they would be in the U.S.
They're not great.
Yeah,
unless you shell out a lot of money.
Yeah, like I know you can
because you
get,
need a sleeper
nice
cabin,
Amtrak sleeper cars.
Yeah, anything less than that,
quote unquote nice ones.
Yeah, anything less than that, thumbs down.
But yeah, I remember you said you had like basically a crazy party on the train.
Yeah. Results not typical. Results may vary.
But it was basically some kid was like, yeah, I got out of the military, I got all this money, I'm just going to buy a bunch of booze, we're going to party the whole way.
Yeah. Yeah. I rode a 48-hour train. I rode a lot of 48-hour trains in China, and most of them were just awful. Even the sleeper cars, awful. You had to slide in like a coffin. You couldn't even sit up.
Yeah, and that's why I've seen, like, I know, like, the, like, Trans-Siberian.
Yeah.
That, you know, basically that's how it is there. You're sleeping, like, in a row of 3 people.
Yeah, that's how it was. I spent all the extra money to get a bunk, because I was like, yeah, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to get this bunk, because this train ride's going to be forever. I'm going to have a nice made bed. I get on this train, my bed is disheveled, and there's a banana in my bed. I don't know what that means. That's not a regular housekeeping thing.
Like
that's
a whole banana, like unopened.
It was a whole.
Peel?
It was a whole unopened banana, but it was very. It was
gift.
very bruised. It was probably inside of someone at some point. Just a very bruised banana in this disheveled bed.
Remove the peel. It's fine.
And
it's fine.
I was in this bunk against a wall, and the wall was shared with the bathroom wall. But the wall didn't go all the way down to the floor, and the train would rustle really hard, and water would slosh from the bathroom toilet onto the floor, and then from the bathroom floor to right under my bunk.
But that's a story for another time.
That is a story for another time, because there's a lot more to that story, but that is a story for another time. All right, so until next time, this has been
Aaron
and Nash for the National Pastime. Nash out!
Panache!
Nash! Whoa!
So they basically were running a program that would follow the first link of a,
were they like tracing the line?
Like, seeing how far down it goes, if there were any like where it would eventually link to the same thing.
Oh.
And it's something like 70% of all Wikipedia articles.
Yeah.
If you follow the first link of that article and then follow the first link of the subsequent article.
Right.
After I think it's like 12 hops.
Yeah.
You get to the psychology. Wiki
oh, really?
page.
Interesting.
But like 70% of all the stuff on Wikipedia, if you follow the first link 12 times, you get to psychology.
Interesting.
They're finding like that's like basically where everything seems to lead eventually.
That's disturbing.
Yeah. but like I thought it was really interesting.
All of Wikipedia leads to my favorite fake science. Is my microphone on?
No, yeah, you're good.
Check. Checkity check yourself before you wreck yourself. Mic check.
Okay.
Mic adjustment.
There's
Mic recheck.
There's
Are my levels
So are these
leveling?
both for me is where these for Ben.
That's up for you two to decide. I poured 2 glasses.
So I assume you're using the sumo cup.
I am, of course. Yeah, nobody better touch this cup. It will one day be mine.
Yeah.
So you're just gonna do like Ben did and just
that's right.
Subscond.
It's the nature of the cup. It chooses its master, and then one day the cup will leave for even greener pastures. Yeah. As with the cup, so with people, or vice versa. As with the people, so with the cup.
Mm-hmm.
Lives run tangent for a while, and then the cup goes its own way. Yeah. It would be selfish of me to try to hold on to the cup. It would be selfish of Ben to keep me from taking the cup.
The cup wants what it wants.
That's right. All right, so we're all set to start.
Yeah, I think you're good.